Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this TEASIMED conference that has been organized by MEDENER, the Association of the Mediterranean Transmission System Operators for Electricity. I'm Angelo Ferrante, I'm the Secretary General of the association, and I just will give you some basic information on the conference and introduce the works. First of all, I bring the warm greetings of our President, Mr. Mourad Adjal, that's the President Director General of Sonelgaz, who at the very last minute was not able to join us because of ministerial engagements in Algeria that could not be deferred. This event will give the opportunity to briefly present the outcomes of TEASIMED, a project that has been developed by the association with the support of the European Commission, DG ENER, but discuss also on how to accelerate the integration of the Mediterranean power system, both in terms of infrastructure and policy developments. I'm very excited to have here today many distinguished speakers and glad to open the works for this event. The program is very dense. Sorry for the slight delay in starting. The time, as usual, is short, so we will try to recover the time in the rest of the conference. I will give you just a couple of general information and then I will leave the floor to our excellent speakers. The conference is organized in two sessions, at the end of which there is the possibility to have questions from the audience. We should finish around 1 o'clock according to the schedule. And now I would leave the floor to Mr. Aziz Ameyoud, that's Director of Strategies at Sonelgaz Algeria and also Chairperson of the Technical Committee Operation of MEDENER. Mr. Ameyoud will introduce the session on behalf of the President, Mr. Adjal. Mr. Ameyoud, the floor is yours.
Angelo. Good morning, all. My speech will be in French. I am Mr. Ameyoud, tel que l'a été mentionné par M. Ferrante. J'ai l'honneur de vous présenter le speech de M. Adjal, Mourad, président de MEDENER, en son nom, pour des raisons retenues par les aspects gouvernementaux au niveau du ministère algérien, et s'excuse pour de rater cet honorable événement. Alors, dans lequel il m'a chargé de vous transmettre ce message. Donc, Monsieur le représentant de la Commission européenne, Monsieur le représentant des différentes institutions, Monsieur le secrétaire général de MEDENER, les membres de MEDENER, Mesdames, Messieurs et honorables invités. Tout d'abord, je voudrais adresser mes félicitations à l'Association méditerranéenne des transporteurs de l'électricité, dénommée MEDENER, notamment le secrétariat et les membres des différents comités par leur effort fourni durant le programme TEASIMED et de savoir surmonter l'ensemble des difficultés, notamment en période qu'on a tous connue, la période de Covid-19, afin de rester dans les engagements déjà arrêtés et d'assurer les objectifs tracés. Aussi, nous adressons tous nos remerciements à la Commission européenne sur son support pour l'aboutissement du projet TEASIMED qui sont en adéquation avec les attentions des membres de l'association en ce qui concerne le rapprochement des systèmes électriques par le développement des interconnexions afin d'assurer l'optimisation de la production sur l'aspect économique et sécurité, qui reste un grand enjeu, la production d'électricité, l'intégration des énergies renouvelables dans les systèmes électriques, élément contributeur à la réduction à la réduction de l'utilisation des énergies fossiles, à la réduction des émissions du CO2, le développement et l'intégration des marchés régionaux de l'électricité, l'optimisation de la production qui devrait aboutir à une meilleure optimisation des coûts, notamment le kilowattheure fourni aux clients. Ceci reste en adéquation avec les activités de l'ENTSO-E, laquelle une forte coordination dans la prise en charge des activités de MEDENER, dans lequel on leur adresse tous nos hommages et remerciements. Sur un autre angle, MEDENER maintient sa dynamique dans les échanges et la contribution dans les différentes organisations autour de la Méditerranée, telles que MEDREG, OME, MEDENER, le COMELEC, l'UFM, qui constituent une complémentarité et de l'échange dans ces activités afin de promouvoir les objectifs communs au sein de la Méditerranée et au sein des pays qui constituent la Méditerranée. En termes de développement futur, notamment le nouveau programme de TEASIMED 2, nous mettons tout notre support et adhésion pour sa concrétisation et encourager à passer à la phase mise en œuvre, notamment dans le développement des interconnexions, l'intégration des marchés et la promotion effective des énergies renouvelables, sachant que la rive sud de la Méditerranée constitue un potentiel à ne pas négliger. Et le développement de cette interconnexion permet de réussir on peut dire, la transition énergétique, notamment vers les énergies renouvelables. Ces résultats nous encouragent à poursuivre les efforts sur une nouvelle dynamique afin de concrétiser nos ambitions de tout un chacun, notamment la mise en œuvre des projets à forte valeur ajoutée, notamment les interconnexions nord-sud, tel que ça a été évalué lors de l'ensemble des programmes de MEDENER, se préparer pour l'introduction aussi de l'hydrogène, qui est un challenge futur, l'introduction de la mobilité électrique, surtout dans la rive sud de la Méditerranée, la digitalisation des systèmes électriques sur l'ensemble de ces aspects, notamment aussi la sécurité informatique, ou ce qu'on appelle communément la cybercriminalité, vu l'intégration, l'introduction de la digitalisation qui est très forte actuellement, et c'est le futur. Mise en place des premiers jalons des marchés régionaux de l'électricité, maintenir les échanges de bonnes pratiques entre les membres qui constituent l'association de MEDENER, échange avec les différentes autres associations avec une interaction directe avec MEDENER en dehors de la Méditerranée, telles que l'ENTSO-E, l'Union arabe de l'électricité, le GCC, l'Association des Balkans, etc. Dans ce cadre, Sonelgaz aussi, en tant que président, directeur général de cette société, Sonelgaz Algérie, est disposé à poursuivre son rôle dans le MEDENER et à soutenir toute initiative pour sa pérennité et sa réussite. Enfin, j'exprime encore une fois mes remerciements à ceux qui ont soutenu notre association et nous souhaitons longue vie à MEDENER. Je vous remercie. Mourad Adjal.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Ameyoud, for these words, and also thanks to President Adjal. Now we have a video message from Mr. Francesco La Camera, who unfortunately is now traveling to South America, so he sent the message. He was not able to join us. Francesco La Camera is Director General at IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, and previously he was Director General of Sustainable Development, Environmental Damage, EU and International Affairs at the Italian Ministry of Environment, Land and Sea. Hope that the video is ready to be projected.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to address you all, even if virtually, at this important event to share IRENA's priorities for the energy transition. There is no doubt that the energy transition is already taking place globally, as well as in the Mediterranean countries. IRENA has been closely monitoring the trends, and we believe that the cost competitiveness of renewables has continued to improve amid the recent crisis and energy security concerns. Renewables will largely dominate the new energy system, and the benefits will be unprecedented. We estimate that 270 gigawatts added in 2021 created $55 billion in saving from global generation cost in 2022, and the total number of people employed in the renewable energy sector rose to 12.7 million in 2021. Indeed, decentralized solutions are crucial to plug the gap and ensure a transition towards a more resilient, secure, inclusive, and just energy system. However, despite continuing to grow, investment in renewable energy are not at the pace needed. They are concentrated in specific technologies and uses, and they are increasingly focused in a number of regions and countries. In our global landscape of renewable energy finance report, we found that countries that are home to about 70% of the world's population receive less than 20% of renewable energy investments. To best support the energy transition, more investment need to flow to less mature technologies, as well as technologies such as storage, which enable power system integration. So, ladies and gentlemen, here, allow me to shift my focus to the Mediterranean region. We are now witnessing a boost of regional collaboration and interconnection projects. This comes in the backdrop of several successful projects, such as the Italy-Tunisia Power Interconnection Projects, HELMET, projects between Morocco and Spain, Egypt with Europe via Greece, as well as several other projects between the EU, European Union, North Africa, the Middle East, and the Balkan region. Cross-border energy interconnection infrastructure exists in the region. This could be leveraged further to develop a connected electricity market around the Mediterranean, which would also support a greater inclusion of renewables. Take the example of North Africa. The share of renewables could reach 87% by 2040 instead of the expected 36%, according to IRENA's recent planning and prospects for renewable power study. However, new infrastructure needs to be created for import and renewable electricity and green hydrogen from MENA to Europe and Asia. We will have the resolve to shift the course. So, distinguished guests, today we find ourselves at a crossroads. It took over 150 years to create the system we are living in. We cannot get to our goal in 2050 and ensure a smooth energy transition if we don't add more renewable energy into the grid. For this to happen, more universal investment are required. Public funds need to go into supporting infrastructure development, enabling policy framework, and addressing persistent socioeconomic gaps. More importantly, we need to build a new energy system with three main pillars of infrastructure: the physical infrastructure, including harmonized grid code for an effective interconnection of national power grids, policy and regulatory infrastructure, and infrastructure of institutional and human capacity. IRENA also calls for using this scenario approach to plan for this new energy system. TSO's inclusive approach is an excellent example on how this process can strengthen ambition, foster dialogue, and facilitate a collaborative transition that takes all stakeholders' views into account. I'm confident that with our collective action, we can succeed and reach tangible and effective solutions. IRENA stands ready to play its role and help drive the energy transition forward. I thank you for the invitation and I wish you a most fruitful event. Thank you very much.
Very important words from Mr. La Camera, highlighting the huge investments in renewables that are expected in the Mediterranean and the importance of infrastructure for facilitating the transition. He highlighted also the approach that we as METESO are following, multilateral cooperation as a means to facilitate integration not only of the systems but also of the people around the Mediterranean. TEASIMED is a project that started at the end of 2020, finishing in these weeks with the important contribution, the co-funding of the European Commission, DG NIE, that had the aim to continue on a process on activities that METESO has been promoting since 2012. We have celebrated the 10 years existence of our association. And now we will have a short synthesis of the main outcomes of this project. That was not the first, it will be not the last, that we as METESO, with the support of the Commission, are continuing to develop in this year. I think that the first part should be a video that summarizes the main achievements, and then there will be a more traditional presentation by slides to show in a nutshell more or less what are the main outcomes of this project. I think that the video can start.
TEASIMED, short for Towards an Efficient, Adequate, Sustainable and Interconnected Mediterranean Power System, is a project carried out by MEDSO, starting on September the 1st, 2020, and running for a total of 31 months. It has successfully brought together experts from all corners of the Mediterranean thanks to multilateral cooperation and a full bottom-up approach. TEASIMED's plan to transform the energy landscape of the Mediterranean region revolves around 5 key working streams. These streams are crucial project elements, working together seamlessly to create a sustainable and interconnected power system. As part of its mission to create a more efficient and interconnected power system for the Mediterranean, TEASIMED updated the Mediterranean Master Plan of the HV Transmission Network Development Plan in its first working stream. This effort involved assessing 19 interconnections across 16 countries and foreseeing an impressive 16 billion euros in new investments. TEASIMED also laid the groundwork for 10,000 kilometers of new transmission lines, which provide up to 19 gigawatts of new transfer capacity. In addition to these impressive numbers, this master plan would facilitate the integration of up to 15 terawatt-hours of electricity from renewable energy sources per year and cut CO2 emissions by up to 24 million tons annually, helping to create a more sustainable future for the Mediterranean region. TEASIMED tackled the challenge of integrating and exchanging renewable energy sources at a regional level. The second working stream focuses on consolidating the Common Target Regulatory Framework to create a consistent Mediterranean grid code. This requires the harmonization of technical rules and regulatory frameworks, which are essential for ensuring the security of supply at affordable costs. By establishing these crucial standards, TEASIMED can play a big part in helping to pave the way for more efficient and sustainable energy exchange across the region. The third working stream was about identifying and implementing pilot projects in selected interconnected electricity exchange zones, IEEZs. optimizing interconnection capacities and sharing knowledge across the region. MEDSO worked closely with experts across the Mediterranean to define the minimum requirements and cooperation principles for a potential market model for cross-border power trading. By carrying out this activity at a regional level, TEASIMED was able to account for the different specificities of each country involved. The development of IEEZs can be a crucial step towards creating a more interconnected and sustainable power system. The fourth working stream aimed to create a sustainable and interconnected power system in the Mediterranean region through a cutting-edge probabilistic adequacy assessment. MEDSO led the initiative, conducting the first ever such assessments and creating the Mediterranean database, DBMed, for data exchange and sharing in technical activities related to statistics, adequacy, operation and planning. This included 2 seasonal assessments and a mid-term forecast. For the fifth working stream, MEDSO organised a wide range of certified training activities, thematic webinars and workshops for its members and external stakeholders, covering thematic areas such as international power exchange benefits, adequacy and more. Over 150 hours of activities involved up to 150 attendees, including the first ever MEDSO Adequacy Summer School with 31 experts from 10 TSOs. Additionally, MEDSO engaged 20 TSOs with 144 representatives in 118 technical committee meetings. We're getting ready for the next phase of TEASIMED, as MEDSO has been awarded a new grant by the EC to implement TEASIMED 2. The project started in January 2023 and will be developed over the next 2 years.
Thank you for the applause. That's mostly to be addressed to the relevant number of people that work in the project. We are a voluntary, as I always say, we are a voluntary association, so all that we are able to produce depends on the willingness of our members to contribute. So if we get some results, it's because of the application of our members and the commitment they have in the association. Now there are, with a few slides, we will enter a bit without being too much detailed into the outcomes of the project. I think that this remote controller should work. Yes. Just to remind to those of you who are not very familiar with MEDSO, we are an association of the Mediterranean companies that manage the high voltage transmission grids of electricity, and now we count 20 members from 20 Mediterranean countries. I would say almost the totality of the Mediterranean countries are part of the association. Our main objective is to promote a favorable climate for the development of the integration of the systems, not only north-south, but also south-south, through the development of rules and interconnectors, in order to create trading exchange zones that show the increase of the energy traded in the Mediterranean. And we work mostly with the support of the European Commission, that see us as a bridge between Europe and Middle East and Northern African region. Our work with the Commission started in 2015. TEASIMED is the third project financed with a grant by DG ENER. The main pillar of our action plan are develop coordinated planning among the members, define a framework of common rules to facilitate power system interoperability and put the basis of a Mediterranean grid code, capacity building, because we believe that one of the main purposes of our association is also to promote the exchange of experience and capacity building among the members. In the last project, we started considering the creation of what we call interconnected electricity exchange zones, where trading of electricity should be implemented, especially the south and eastern part of the Mediterranean are characterized by very weak interconnection level, but even when interconnection exists, very rarely these interconnectors are used on a commercial basis. So where it is possible, we would promote the creation of platforms for trading electricity. In Europe, we know very well how complex is this process. So the approach that we are implementing is a step by step in several, with a medium-term perspective. But some actions, we think some actions can be implemented rather soon if the involved parties show the willingness to be effective on this area. So, as I said, the first project started in 2015, Mediterranean Project 1, then a second project, Mediterranean Project 2, now TEASIMED, and as it was announced by the video, we have already a contribution for the next 3 years, for this starting from 2023 until 2025, for a new project that is in continuation with the old one, and that's why we called it TEASIMED 2, but that's also some new improvements and activities that we will see in a while. Yes, then for a let's say, more detailed presentation of the 5 working streams that are characterized in TEASIMED, I will leave the floor to Luca Ruffino, who's the program officer of MEDENER. Of course, all the work of the project is being developed by the technical committees of MEDENER. This is a peculiarity of our work, a full bottom-up approach. So technical committees led by chairperson coming from different countries, from planning to economic studies and scenarios, to operation, to knowledge sharing, all of them voluntarily participating in the activity of the association. So, Luca.
Okay, so as we've seen in the video, our project is composed of 5 tasks, and in this short presentation I will try to give you an overview of this achievement we have reached with the project. So, what is the Mediterranean? The Mediterranean is a region of contrast. We see in the north a highly integrated region with common policies and common regulation, while other sub-regions of the Mediterranean basin show a differentiated view over the policies towards renewables and towards energy regulation. But inside this contrast, also some opportunities exist. If we see the Mediterranean, we have, for instance, 4 time zones that range from Portugal to Jordan, that could bring the benefit of shift of peak. And moreover, we see one of the best area in the world for the energy from renewable sources. Is one of the best area for solar, but also for wind. We tried to intercept this contrast in our driver of the scenarios. So the first task we perform for the updating of our Mediterranean grid is the drafting of the scenarios starting from drivers. Drivers that have, because of the contrast, some difference over the demand and the supply. So while in the south the demand is mostly supported by an highly GDP growth and population, in the north side there is a shift towards electrification of the of the society. And this will lead, according to our 3 scenarios, to a range of 2030 electricity demand compared to 2020. At the same time, regarding the supply, we overview kind of duplication or triplication of wind power in the region in 2030, and triplication to quintuplication of solar at the same time horizon. So, and it was confirmed also from IRENA, the rest share in 2030 will go up to 60% of the power generation from 28% of 2020. The carbon-free generation, we include also nuclear, will rise up to 73% from 48% of 2020, and we will can be able to have a positive effect on the reduction of CO2 emission and CO2 content of electricity. So this is in a nutshell what we imagine for 2030. And based on this scenario, we have built our Mediterranean grid for 2030. In particular, we assessed 19 interconnections. Some of them will be realized by 2030 over 3 main corridors from west to east. These 19 interconnections will mobilize 16 billion euro of investments for around 10,000 kilometers of new lines involving 16 countries. It will add up 19 gigawatts of new interconnection capacity. The positive effect we can see if this Mediterranean grid will take place is an increase of security of supply, the access to more affordable electricity price, as I said before, also the increase of carbon-free generation and CO2 emission. But to mobilize these investments, to realize this hardware, we need also the software. For the software, TSOs, of course, can play and have to play their role, but as you can see, we are just a building block of this construction. We cannot do more that we can without the engagement of the institution, without a clear public acceptance of investments and the back of financial institutions. So in the project we have worked to have a common playground for the grid code and for ensure, as I said before, coordination of planning and operation. We have built an indicator for that take into consideration the degree of integration of the region, that take into account cross-border grid development and power market development. And thanks to this indicator, will be possible in the future to also monitor the advancement of this process. But again, this indicator was also the result of some interviews we had with stakeholders. And one of the most common, the common denominator we received from this interview is that it is the institutional buy-in of this process that is essential for pushing a real regional integration. So, as we said in a webinar at the beginning of this project, technicians and policymakers and decision makers have to go together hand by hand. We have also the opportunity to improve our work towards some pilot project. We have advanced in 2 zones. We have identified 2 sub-regions that can be of interest to develop this pilot project. And for this pilot project, we identified the need of implement a coherent, harmonized set of technical rules for make and let the interconnection work. But also we identified the transparency among the members as a key passage and a key achievement that has to be achieved also thanks to the next project through the design of web platform that will enable the changing of electricity. Also in this case, the cooperation with the institutional stakeholders is essential, so with the European Commission on one side, but also with the League of Arab States on the eastern and western part of the Mediterranean, as well as COMELEC. And this cooperation is key to success. There is also an identified interest from many TSOs to understand how to plug with the European framework. Coming to our proposal, to our specific proposal, we propose a multi-phase approach that is composed of 3 steps. And I would like to take your attention to the step 1 of this process that we aim to reach in the coming future with an evolution of bilateral contracts that are the most common framework until now, that we understand that are made of predefined price that should evolve from a predefined price to a price range that will allow an increased exchange opportunities among the countries. In the step 2, we see this bilateral improved contract go to trilateral approach, while in the step 3 we need also a regulatory change for allow a multilateral contract counterparts and the entering in the market of IPPs and other market participants. We have worked also to make the interconnection work in a more transparent way. So members have defined during the project 5 priority areas for enhancing the cooperation of operation among neighboring countries, taking into consideration the transparency for outage planning, for the net transfer capacity coordination, the short-term adequacy, the management of energy exchanges, and transparency of energy situation. These 5 priorities are key for having a secure exchange of electricity. Based on these 5 priorities, we have also defined some categories of data that should be shared at different time frames. And we also create a template to collect operational forecast and statistical data. This template has been then integrated in our Mediterranean database that is a benchmark in the region for the collection of data, I would say. and is a virtual tool that covers 4 sections of interest of the TSOs, so the network, the market and scenario section, and adequacy operation. But we also work, since Mediterranean Project 2, also to make some information available for our stakeholders, so you can find the aggregated data publicly available on a virtual application at that website. Thanks to this work on transparency, it has been possible also to work at a very important achievement in the region and also for the association. The very first adequacy assessment made and studied for the Mediterranean region. The adequacy assessment helped to answer to important questions related to security of supply, so the capacity to cover power demand under extreme conditions, and how interconnection could reduce shortage situation. This is also important and key for the integration of the renewables. So we carried out some investigation related to the power system. We have issued and are published on our website 2 seasonal adequacy and 1 midterm adequacy addressing the winter and summer for the seasonal adequacy, and the midterm adequacy, the 2025-2027 horizon. As you can see, most of the countries of the southern bank of the Mediterranean has been taken into account in this first adequacy assessment. What are the results? The result, as you can see, from the isolated operation to the interconnected operation, we see significantly the improvement of some key indicators, such as the loss of load expectation and the cumulative average expected energy not served, that show in all the countries significant improvements. I would also take the opportunity to point the attention to 2 critical situations that still persist, the one related to Libya and Lebanon. And let me say that this is due also to the lack of interconnection, of significant interconnection of these countries, that doesn't permit the same improvement achieved in the other countries. So through the interconnection, we can ensure also the security of supply and supply of electricity to all our citizens. The project was also the occasion to build with our members some training programs. We have been able to offer to our experts important and certified training on the energy regulation. We have been working also to create some capacity on the adequacy assessment. So in the coming project, we will be able to internalize this activity. And as a part of the first stream, we continue to train our members internally on market modeling and simulation tools. And this is important because, as we said, most of our activities are based on the effort of our members' representatives. And we have been able also to engage our stakeholders in several thematic workshops, and it was the occasion also to share our experience with other important institutions and organizations. And this is just an overview of the project. Of course, we will be engaged to organize other webinars to present in depth, for sure, the Mediterranean Master Plan 2022. So stay tuned in our social media for having information for the organization of this webinar. So this is all from my side. Angelo, I leave you the floor.
Yes, maybe. There is only one additional slide we would like to mention. Thanks, Luca, for the resume of the activities carried out in TEASIMED. An important thing is that all our reports are publicly available. So if you go to our website, med-tso.org, you have all the reports that are published, so you can enter into the details of our work. Just to highlight once more the cooperation with the main regional stakeholders as essential for the continuation and the effectiveness of our activity. It's not only a list. No? I'll go there.
Okay. It's back.
Now I'm here, so I will continue from the lecture. It's not only a list of stakeholders, they are the real entities with which we work day by day. So, of course, the European Commission and the League of Arab States is something new for us, starting cooperation also with the entity. UFM, the Union for the Mediterranean, where we have continuous participation in the regional, in the energy platforms, and in particular in the regional electricity market platform. MEDREG, that's the Association of the Regulators. We have a cooperation framework since 2014, and we are continuously sharing our work with them. ENTSO-E, we have a long-term joint cooperation agreement since 2017, and that's been recently renewed. MEDENER and OME, with those association entities, we are cooperating with UFM in the frame of the UFM platforms, but not only for the elaboration of long-term energy scenarios. Last but not least, COMELEC, that was mentioned also by Luca in his slides. We signed a protocol of cooperation in 2022 together with OME and MEDENER, and they are essential for making possible the implementation of the pilot project in the Maghreb region. Many of these stakeholders are here, they are represented here today, so I'm happy to have also this opportunity to thank them for their support. We have to work together because we think the only possibility to implement the integration of power systems in the future of markets in the Mediterranean is a gradual approach, recognizing that there is not a one-size-fits-all solution, and so we have to adapt to the peculiarities of the countries. And so a sub-regional approach that we are trying to implement could be the most effective. This was definitely the last slide, yes, of this presentation. Thank you very much. And again, for any need of deepening our work, our website has all the information that are available for you. So, thank you. So now, having completed this first part of this event, describing the activities carried out in the frame of TEASIMED, I'm very glad to start the first panel of this workshop that's dedicated to the role of interconnections in promoting the integration of power system. I have the pleasure to have here with us Ms. Sonya Twohig, that's the Secretary General of ENTSO-E, That's one of our main stakeholders, as I mentioned before. Sonya is Secretary General, if I'm not wrong, for a couple of years in ENTSO-E. Formerly, she was head of the operations section in ENTSO-E, and before she held several managing positions in IRGRID, that's the Irish transmission ISO, or transmission system operator, I'm not sure, but anyhow, from Ireland. So, Sonya, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angelo, and good morning to you all. The clicker, that's helpful. So good morning to you all. I'm very pleased to be here today for the TEASIMED conference and for the closing conference. It's a very interesting project. Of course, a number of our members of ENTSO-E are members of the MED-TSO, so we have a very mutual cooperation between us. I'd like to talk a little bit about ENTSO-E first, and of course our relations with MED-TSO, and then I will welcome onto the stage the panelists for our discussion, which will also be very, very interesting and very, very fruitful. So firstly, if I will move to the next slide. Well, just to say who is in ENTSO-E, it is 39 TSOs, full members, and then we have 2 new observers, Twohig, who's a member of MED-TSO, and Ukrenergo, the Ukrainian TSO. So it is a very interesting group of TSOs. It is, of course, representative across Europe. And ENTSO-E is a European association with both EU and non-EU TSOs within it. Of course, ENTSO-E, what is our role? Well, we want to, of course, enable a secure and sustainable European energy transition. We have a number of responsibilities under law, under EU law. One is to plan the long-term grid, okay, in Europe. And we call this the TYNDP, the 10-year Network Development Plan. Right now, it's more than just 10 years. We look beyond because 10 years is not enough anymore. So it's the long-term grid, but we still have the term TYNDP. We also look at security analysis. And with the network codes under EU law, we have a number of codes regarding to secure operation. And that takes the form of regional security coordinators, or RCCs, and of course the RCC has a role there to provide services to TSOs in the area of secure operation. TSOs themselves have agreed to cooperate and harmonize their arrangements through these network codes, and these are fundamental to ensuring across Europe that we have a clear set of rules for operating the system. We also have, of course, market. The market is important functioning, and this is what the IEM is about, the internal energy market. Again, there we have a number of market rules, CACM, the capacity allocation, and also on balancing rules, forward capacity, etc. All of these rules are fundamental to the operation of the system. A number of our platforms. So ENTSO-E is responsible for a number of IT platforms, but these are also fundamental platforms that enable all of these transition points. We are in the business of standardization, especially on IT and data. So data is a massive aspect for us. We have a CGEMS, which is a Common Grid Model Exchange Standard, and we're involved in the SIM standardization as well. So you know, digitalization is becoming an important topic for TSOs. Of course, TSOs will always say that they were digital at the first place, but we have an enhancement to make with regard to further advancing that. All of the transition that you see in front of you, both from Mediterranean perspective, but across Europe, is about advancing digital aspects and more connections that have digital aspects. Fundamentally, the last point I wanted to stress with you is regional cooperation. It's about people. It's about us. It's about us talking. It's about us working together. So the cooperation here today to talk with regard to Mediterranean is also fundamentally across Europe a fundamental part of energy transition. And we cannot do it without good cooperation together. So ENTSO-E, as I said, is 39 TSOs. If I move to the next slide, we will talk about the vision. We published in October 2022. And I guess everyone has a vision of the future. When you try to ask all 39 TSOs what is their vision of the future, this is what we developed together. Essentially, we have 4 pillars of a future transition. Flexibility. In Commission's publication yesterday on the market design in Europe, the flexibility needs of an energy transition system is a fundamental part of it. We need to understand when you have a renewables-based system with dynamics and parameters that are moving, especially that are weather dependent, the flexibility question becomes a fundamental parameter to know about. For TSOs, again, this is not new. TSOs have long had flexibility services. We didn't call them that. We call them ancillary services. We call them primary reserve. We call them, spinning reserve. Now we call it flexibility because, of course, we want to call it a service or a resource. And it's that focus on that resource that's important here. So for the vision, we have a flexibility, but we also want to operate a future grid. Now, the future grid is today's grid, but it will evolve. It will be enhanced by lots of interconnection, as you saw this morning, by lots of connections, by storage, by future advances in hydrogen, etc. So what will be the grid to operate in the future? And the TSOs have to work together on various aspects around that new control center concept, but also decision-making and how that will be taken in a much more advanced sense with all these connections. We, of course, also need infrastructure. Today was a lot about connections and infrastructure, but it's not just saying we need projects with interconnection. We obviously need to also work, as you know, with stakeholders on permitting, on the smooth transition of these projects. It's very, we have a lot of years' experience now of building interconnection, but we know that every time a new interconnection is progressed, we have to work with local stakeholders, we have to work with agencies, and so the TSOs very fundamentally need that infrastructure to move quite quickly, but also with regards to an environmental perspective and a sustainability. We're not here just to go in, out, and deliver an infrastructure. We want to ensure that it's a sustainable interconnection or sustainable project. Finally, we have a design, a market design. And of course, the recent Commission consultation on electricity market design is an interesting one now because it asks us to consider what it is that we need for the energy transition. The sort of shock of the last 12 months of high prices has sort of triggered a sort of review, and that's necessary in any sort of frame with regard to transition. Transition itself on a market front does bring challenges. The question is, where's the money? Where can investment be guaranteed its stability? And that's an important question in the transition question. So all 4 parameters interact here, for the energy transition, and we have to consider all of them in order to create a sustainable transition. Of course, you have the 3 sort of interesting values in the middle around sustainability, affordability, and resilience. Yesterday we had a conference in ENTSO-E on adapting the grid to resilience. It's an important question. Are you resilient? Of course I am. Are you able to take care of the shocks? And so in the last year, with all of the difficulties in Europe with war in Ukraine, certainly Europe has taken a lot of shocks, right? And the question is, are we ready for further shocks? Does it have to be so shocking? Maybe not. Maybe that's the new world we're in. It is a transition world. Sustainability, we always want, especially in interconnections, and today when we talk about these projects in the Mediterranean, they need to be sustainable. They need to be least no regrets, least regrets, no regrets. They need to ensure that they are the right solutions at all points. But affordability is the one that in the last 12 months we've all been asking the question, is the energy transition affordable? And we need to ensure at every step of the way we are delivering an affordable system for all. And this is part of, again. I guess what's really interesting on the right-hand side of the screen is what we call the game changers. The game changers in the transition are what would be the one that moves faster, almost like what would actually be the sort of interesting development that might advance, any one of these parameters become the more important aspect. So you see there are lots of different sort of what I call innovation concepts like superconductivity or nuclear renaissance or supergrids. So there's some interesting ideas that are coming through on the innovation front, but also there the kind of game changers that might make all the difference in moving faster. Because as you can see, sometimes some of these parameters might slow us down. Discussions on, how to move forward on permitting may not be so fast, but maybe there are game changers that actually move that a bit more faster. So we are particularly interested in ENTSO-E on the digitalization front. And of course, also Commission has Digitalization Energy Action Plan, and this is together with the DSO entity, the European DSO entity. We work on that together. And of course, we also flag here the hydrogen uptake and the question of the role of hydrogen in the future, the existing gas infrastructure that's well built across Europe, and what's that future beyond where it is now. So these are very interesting concepts. We don't have the full answers to you today. It's a crystal ball, but we want to sort of tell you what are the sort of parameters and the future that might actually make all the difference here. I just wanted to highlight the network development plan of ENTSO-E because, of course, this is our link with MEDTSO very fundamentally. It is a significant undertaking every 2 years to write a network development plan for Europe. Here you will see the southern part of Europe, and of course the focusing on the Mediterranean, and of course the type of capacity increases that are forecasted within this network development plan. And of course we also highlight now storage, okay, the storage needs, because you have a renewables-based system. Storage is a fundamental resource and service that is aspects of that. So equally, the amount of storage needs is also identified. And of course, we also need, as you say, peaking unit needs and so on. We are, of course, now looking at the flexibility question overall. Again, as I say, ENTSO-E does itself in the system adequacy sense look at flexibility. But now with the request of the Commission through its draft legislation would be also asking ENTSO-E to address overall flexibility based on a network that is developed here. And of course the flows that are going to come now north-south, south-north across this area. So what can I say? Significant investment is envisaged. Significant investment also with the idea that it needs to have the services that come with it in terms of storage and flexibility. Okay, in terms of the actual process of producing the network development plan, is very similar to how MEDTSO also has developed its analysis. There are scenarios. These are done together with our gas counterpart ENTSO-G, but also all in conjunction with the European Commission and with ACER on what are the needs and the scenarios of the future. We then take those scenarios and identify the overall needs that needs to come from the network. We then identify through the project collection which projects are being identified both by TSOs but also third parties. And then we put that together in terms of an overall assessment and analysis of the projects through what they call a CBA, a cost-benefit analysis. We provide this information to the European Commission, who then determines the projects of common interest between EU member states and mutual interest between EU and non-EU countries. Yeah. So this is our process. I just wanted to say finally, before we move to the panel, ENTSO-E has a long history with MEDTSO, I'm delighted to say, with Angelo, and we have, since 2017, a cooperation agreement, mostly focusing on the long-term scenarios and the grid maps, etc., as well as our mutual members. We also have updated it in 2021, as Angelo explained, and of course, in future, we would like to develop cost and markets, technology and innovation outlooks, and project development guidelines. Also, if I could welcome onto the panel here as well as Rena Kuwahata from IEA, Energy Analyst in Power System Transformation. Rena is Energy Analyst with IEA and she's leading the agency's work on regional interconnection for decarbonization and enhancing energy security. Guida, MED-TSO Vice President. Guido is Head of International Public Affairs at Terna and is also ENTSO-E board member. In his current position, he is responsible for the strategic positioning of the company towards its international stakeholders, as well as policymakers, regulators, and key industry players at international level. We have also to welcome into our panel Roberta Boniotti, MEDENER Secretary General. Welcome, Roberta, and who's also advisor on European and international affairs at ENER, the Italian National Agency for New Technologies, Energy and Sustainable Economic Development in Brussels, maintaining key links with stakeholders in the EU institutions. And finally, I welcome onto the stage and to our panel Khaled Nouasri, COMELEC Secretary General and Chairman of and CEO of Sonelgaz Production. Thank you to you all and welcome to the panel. The panel today will look at the role of interconnections in driving a sustainable energy transition in the Mediterranean. They will look at the challenges and the opportunities related to integrated power systems. And so I will ask firstly Roland to now present for 10 minutes. Thank you, Roland.
Thank you very much for having me here on behalf of the International Renewable Energy Agency. You have seen already our Director General, Francesco La Camera, speaking, and I would like to connect to what he said, the work we have done in North Africa and in the interconnection. I have prepared some slides. I have to see if yes, they are there. So far, I want like to immediately connect on a study we did here on planning and prospects for the renewable power in North Africa. And you see here on the left side a chart that shows that energy has played a marginal, so renewable energy has played a marginal role in Africa, but the region can strongly benefit from the falling renewable energy cost and its ample endowments of wind and solar energy. Power sector expansions needs in the medium to long term due to retiring generation capacity and rising demand offers a space for the transition away from fossil fuel. You see, because of the gas is going down, there is decommissioning of power plants, but despite this, there is not really a bigger ambition in the plans, but also you see here in the peak load, in the plan scenario and in the transition scenario that the demand is sufficiently increasing. You see here also for the preparation of the region, the North Africa regions, in a national determined contribution, that most countries have NDC commitments. The only country that have no NDC commitments is Libya. Also, you see the policy ambitions in the region reveal an overall desire to reach higher shares of a higher renewable energy share, so the ambition is there. Solar and wind power is expanding because also this renewable energy resources, mainly solar and wind, are also cost competitive against fossil fuels. Over the last few years, the countries have signed several agreements, partner countries and private companies, to explore green hydrogen production and launch pilot projects. So apart from connecting North Africa with, let's say, on the electrons flow via DC lines and AC lines, there is also an ambition to connect with a flow molecules, hydrogen molecules, and also hydrogen derivatives as ammonia. The significance is very important are the interconnection. Currently, there exist major constraints on cross-border electricity trade owing to lack of trade mechanism and grid stability related operational constraints. Even so, physical capacities of the interconnection lines are sufficient to allow more changes. You see here, let's say there is in the green part some connections in the planning for the trade within North African countries, and there is also connections planned, let's say, between the North African countries and the European Union. Pursuing a greater end-use electrification and investments in cross-border electricity connection, there is an opportunity to reach 87% of renewables in generation by 2040. So this is significantly higher as we had in the planned scenario, which would also be 14% compared, let's say, to the planned scenario. For this to happen, the electricity trade would require threefold increase of compliant scenario. Very important here is the significance of battery storage. Currently, the deployment of battery storage is not included in the national energy plans in North African country, and there are no large-scale stationary battery storage projections in the region. With battery growth included in the transition solution, the unit cost of electricity has more room to decrease by 2040, so 6.4% less than in the transition scenario. Let's say on the flexibility side, battery storage is important. Let's say on the national stabilizing of the grid systems, batteries add a lot of value to stabilize the electricity grid, and it can, is releasing a little bit the pressure on cross-border interconnections, but very clearly IRENA is encouraging the region to increase and to improve the cross-border interconnection. Green hydrogen production potential in North Africa. The region is very much blessed with renewable energy resources, so solar and wind, high solar radiation, but also wind resources are available, which significantly makes the region very attractive for the green hydrogen production. In the scenario, so we have a scenario where electrolyzers are allowed to enter in the transition solution. The hydrogen production level can reach above 23 megatons by 2040. Just to give you a sense of how much renewable electricity would be needed to produce 10 megatons or million tons of green hydrogen, you would need about 700 terawatt hours of renewable electricity, which is the electricity need of a country like Germany. So there is plans and discussions ongoing in using the region and connecting the region with and there have been a lot of bilateral agreements being closed to use the region for the production of green hydrogen. Very important to say, we have to look at guarantees of origin to make sure that green hydrogen is really green and is not creating CO2 emission in other places. I missed this slide. Large-scale addition of renewables are crucial for the energy security in the region. So some of the challenges that arise are from the addition of renewables. So this requires higher flexibility in operation, requires larger operating reserves, causes frequent ramping of thermal generation units at higher costs. It requires efficient grid management, and challenges that also exist are not utilizing the current system capacity to the fullest. Also, major investments are required in the existing and new infrastructure. Strengthening of the regional grid is key for a better system integration. From the technology side, there are several available solutions. So it has been mentioned already, interconnections with which AC and DC lines and connection. The development of regional grid codes is very, very important for the region to create kind of harmonized grid codes that help to connect the grid systems, the national grid systems. Also storage systems, demand response systems, and then we mentioned the hydrogen production with power to X solution, green hydrogen enabling the distribution of renewable power across the regions and globally. IRENA believes that there is a link between the power system, of course, and the electro-vehicles. So the electro-vehicles are helping to decarbonize the electricity grid, while the electricity grids also helps to decarbonize individual electromobility, but also the batteries, if they are used in the right way, can help to stabilize the grid system. Flexible thermal power plants will be also important in the next years, especially to balance the grid and with the variability that is added to the systems coming from renewable energies. Also to mention digitalization, smart grids, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence and big data is important to connect the grids. And it has been shown in the last presentation from the Director General of the ENTSO-E, so bilateral agreements to come to cross-border power exchange and reserve provisions is important. Then a regional grid codes I mentioned will help to harmonize the grid connections. And then in the last stage of a coordinated international cooperation, we see also the use of international harmonized standards in the systems. We see in the current status of interconnections in the regions that there are 10 interconnections between the European Union and the neighboring countries, including Turkey and Morocco. Turkey's transmission grid is interconnected with Southeast Europe's synchronous 400 kV grid to Greece and 2 lines to Bulgaria. And then there is Morocco's grid is linked with Spain through 2 400 kV subsea cables. And there is, of course, what has been mentioned earlier, the Italy-Tunisia interconnection project is currently under development. We see a cross-border interconnection provides several advantages. The cross-border power interconnection provides a lot of advantages, as I have taken it here from the Nordic grid system. So it can promote electricity trade, it fosters the integration of electricity markets, evolving markets with new business opportunities for trading, enable the development of and access to larger resources for peak load, provide access to cheaper supply sources, boost the flexibility and reliability of local grids, will allow for use of renewable resources, and also allow for the sharing of reserves between countries and increase overall system security. We also see that advanced digital technologies and regulations can help to leverage interconnections. Important is here to mention again the harmonized regional grid codes, but also digital technologies such as artificial intelligence supports the decision-making process in operation and maintenance of systems and implementation of new market designs, and big data provides a clear overview input for artificial intelligence and the emergence of new business models. Also, Internet of Things devices enable smart grids through the collection, transmission, and use of large amounts of data, intelligently integrating grid-connected users, optimizing grid operation, and increasing system flexibility. I would like to stop here with my presentation and look forward for the further discussion today. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Roland, and I welcome now Rena Kuwahata from IEA, and Rena is the IEA Energy Analyst Power System Transformation. Thank you.
Is there Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you very much to TEASIMED organizers for having me here today. And also thank you, Sonya, for being an inspiration for women in this field. I thank you for the kind introduction. I'm Rena Kuwahata, Power System Transformation Energy Analyst at the International Energy Agency. Today, my message is that regional interconnection is a useful tool for accelerating a secure energy transition. I'd like to provide a global perspective on the topic. And how does this work? This one, right? Oh, now it goes. It has a delayed reaction, perhaps. Thank you. Good. So, the International Energy Agency publishes every year the World Energy Outlook. The latest one was launched at the end of October last year, and it shows the global and regional power mix of 2030 and 2050. If we assume that all the governments around the world, their stated decarbonization policies are implemented, this is what we envision. So the stated policy scenario, STEPS, shows the outcome if today's policies are more or less continued in a similar fashion. The announced pledges scenario, the APS, shows the outcomes if the declared decarbonization targets are actually enforced, and this implies a change in policies from what we see today. The net zero emission scenario, NZE, shows the outcome if governments commit to targets of global net zero emissions by 2050. So we see here the quantities of electricity generated by different sources in 2030 and 2050 if we follow these policy trajectories. Now let us assume that governments can be expected to implement their announced pledges. So the APS scenario, let's focus on those results. The global announced pledges scenario shows that 50% of global electricity will be supplied by renewables by 2030 and 80% by 2050. Essentially, 80% of the new generation capacity that is needed to cover the growing demand and the retirement of fossil fuels until 2050 must come from renewables. So what does this high penetration of renewables and the energy transition mean for power systems? We expect the power system to be more and more stressed from things like electrification. We expect 60% increase in the electricity consumption in African countries and more than 20% increase in Europe by 2030. This will mean higher amounts of power consumption and potentially higher variations as we withdraw and inject energy into the electricity grid through sector coupling. The grids will be stressed also from renewables integration and fossil fuel phase out. This will increase the need for power system flexibility and grid stability services. You see on the left a chart showing the expected amount of power plant retirements and additions per technology. With 50% of the additions expected to come from renewables by 2030 and 80% by 2050, we calculated that double the amount of flexibility will be needed by 2030 to achieve the APS. And you see on the right, as you see on the right, and then nearly double again by 2050. So this is needed to adjust the power system on an hourly basis to accommodate the demand patterns and the variability of wind and solar output. The other things that is going to be stressing our power systems is climate change and aging infrastructure. The combination of these things means more frequent power outages. This is because of exposure to extreme weather, but also because of all the maintenance and replacement works that has to happen at the same time. Here you see a chart from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in the United States showing the increase over time of the weather-related disasters that cause billion-dollar damages. We couldn't find a similar chart for Europe and the Mediterranean region, but most likely it looks similar, especially in the future. So, as explained, we calculated that the power system flexibility must globally double by 2030 to meet the announced pledges scenario. The graph on the left, it shows the expected sources of these flexibilities, which are demand and supply flexibility measures. The decentralized nature of some of these flexibility sources means that supply will be available in a distributed manner across our power grids, but distributed energy resources needs to be connected to distribution grids. And this is why we need to increase the amount of grids to connect them. Also, if you look closely, you'll see that large power plants like fossil, nuclear, and hydro are still expected to supply almost half of the flexibility in 2050. Thinking about the locations of these variable renewable power plants and the traditional large power plants, we understand that transmission grids are also needed. They need to grow to provide better access to these flexibilities. And this is why you see on the right how much more grids and upgrades are needed to ensure that we can integrate the stated amount of renewables. 14 million kilometers of distribution and 1.8 million kilometers more transmission is needed by 2030 to meet the announced pledges scenario. What are the benefits of interconnectors? This ENTSO-E map gives a quick view on how densely interconnected the Mediterranean region is. First of all, it gives wider access to cheaper production. If the nuclear power plant in France is the cheapest source of energy when there's no wind power, or if the hydropower plant in Spain is the cheapest when nuclear power plant is under maintenance, the country with a shortage of cheap supply can buy the excess from its neighbor. A highly meshed system allows strong market integration. And this is why the European Union pushes the its member states, to increase the interconnection capacities to at least 15% of its production capacities by 2030. Specific to renewables and demand variability, interconnection facilitates smoothing effect because a local phenomena or a trend is not time synchronous across a wide geographic region. This here is an example from Asia, where the International Energy Agency has done several deep dive analyses. It shows how the aggregated wind and solar outputs on a country level is smoothed out when aggregated at a regional level. Interconnectors allow also the critical flexibilities to be accessed across a wider area. Here is another example from Asia, where the reserve margin of each of the 9 control areas shown, this is an example from Japan, as you see, with and without the interconnection. And by sharing the reserves through interconnection, those 3 areas marked in red were able to meet the minimum requirements of 8%. The findings here is similar to what was introduced by Luca before for the study of the Mediterranean region. Interconnection facilitates access to more options to cover the deficits in times of need, making systems which are weaker on its own stronger and more secure together. So my final message is that regional interconnection is a useful tool to accelerate a secure and efficient transition to clean electricity. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Thank you, Rena. And now I welcome to the stage Guido, who is the MED TSO Vice President. Welcome.
So, thank you, Sonya. Good morning, everybody. So, before to start my speech, I would like to remind the main goal of MEDSO. MEDSO, the main goal is to integrate the Mediterranean region, so to push to strengthen interconnection within the MENA region, so to create a regional bridge between Europe and North Africa and the Middle East countries. And the master plan of the year 2022, the TEASIMED, this master plan is one of the results of the TEASIMED that's been finalized today. In the master plan, you have the benefit, we have evaluated the benefit of all the interconnection projects with neighboring countries, as illustrated in this slide. And this has been done on the basis of a very deep analysis on the long-term energy scenarios, done together in cooperation with ENTSO-E. So the main goal in this way is to, with these interconnections, is to integrate renewable energy resources to be able to manage in a appropriate way the increase of the consumption, as we've seen in the previous presentation, but also to have a system more resilient and to increase the security of supply of the regions, and at the end also to have an adequate increase of economic and social welfare. Have been studied 19 projects. The cost is around 16 billion euros. We are also talking of 19 new gigawatt of a new transmission capacity. It's a huge amount, and in order to be able to realize all these projects, as also has been said this morning by Mr. Francesco La Camera in his open speech, there is a need to overcome some points like the gaps related to the financial and policy regulatory gaps. Going more in depth, what does it mean? So on technical regulatory side, there is a need to have harmonized rules for the development and the operation of the electricity system. What this means? This means, for example, to have adequate market rules for the usage of the interconnection, not only the new one that are forecasted, but also the existing one. On the operational side, to have adequate mechanism and framework in order to be able to integrate renewable energy sources in a different energy mix. And let me say, all those aspects are the ones in which, for which we are working within MEDSO. So TEASIMED, as illustrated this morning by Luca Ruffino, we had some studies, some pilot projects, some exchange in order to go on this direction. And those topics are also the ones included in the new TEASIMED project already started in 2023. So in January. The main point is the financial one. MENA countries needs, in this case, appropriate scheme for the remuneration. Also, this is combined with, for some countries, the financial weakness. All those projects are long-term investments, are capital intensive. So in this way, I think there is a need to have an efficient financing mechanism for remunerating the TSO. And in this way, we need regional policies instead. So we have to work at regional level instead that in individual countries. So the regulation in this way should involve all the regions and not work only for some specific countries. Also at European level, we can do more, not working only for more member states, but also to support the investments in these neighboring countries. If I refer to the lack of investments and the regulatory framework, these two topics are similar to a chicken-egg problem. So what we see is that a lack of a sound regulatory framework gives a lack of investments. On the other side, if you do not invest, there is a very slow need to define appropriate regulation, because you don't see the urgency to develop new infrastructure. So we need in this way to break this loop, and the way to break this loop is to facilitate, to start with the investments that require a long time for the implementation, having adequate support in doing that, and we see that implementing this project, they can act as a catalyst for boosting other new initiatives. And let me say this is the case of the project between Italy and Tunisia. The ELMED project has been mentioned several times this morning. This is the project we started to work many years ago, but we had a support. So this is a link between Sicily and the Tunisian peninsula of Cape of Bon. It's a 600 megawatt HVDC with the technology on VSG. And this project has been supported by the banks in performing the surveys, terrestrial submarine and submarine, to elaborate the environment analysis for this project. And we succeeded also to get funding from the Commission with the last SF application in 2022. So this is a project now that is now in its reality. And I'm very confident that this is the first after many years interconnection between Europe and North Africa, and will change, will be the game changer for the new other investments in the North African region, not only in terms of infrastructure, but also in terms of new generation, so the development of new renewable energy sources, and also will be a possibility to have the possibility to increase the knowledge on how to manage this kind of new interconnection. We are speaking about an HVDC cable, so the way in which we operate and the impact that this new cable has in terms of operating the system. So I'm very confident that this project that has been funded by the Commission is the first of other new projects will be realized, and I'm very confident for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guido. And now I welcome Roberta Boniotti from MEDENER, Secretary General. Thank you, Roberta.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here, for inviting me to this very important closing event of the TEASIMED project. I represent the MEDENER Association today. As we've heard before from Angelo, we collaborate together. We collaborate in the frame of the UFM mainly, but not just. Also, we signed together with MED-TSO the Memorandum of Cooperation with MED-TSO, OMI, and COMELEC. We are a stakeholder of the UFM Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Platform. The MEDENER Association, very quickly, in a glimpse, is the association of national agencies for energy management, and it brings together 13 national energy agencies from the northern and southern shores of the Mediterranean region. We are mainly in charge of implementing public policies on energy efficiency and promotion of renewable energy sources that are the two key conditions for the success of the energy and climate transition in the Mediterranean. Our association was established in 1997, and we contributed since then to facilitate sharing of experiences, know-how, best practices. We strongly believe in the multilateral approach, as was underlined also before, in the dialogue. And of course, we are in the areas of energy efficiency and renewable energy. We are national agencies, and some of the agencies have been established thanks to our network in the years from 1997 when we started. The transfer, of course, of skills, methods, and technologies in those areas is very important, and training, as we said before, capacity building and knowledge sharing. Together with RECRI, that is our partner for Egypt, and this is the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, based in Cairo. We work together at the MED project. That's another EU-funded project with the general objective to contribute to enhancing energy security to beneficiary countries, fostering the transition to low-carbon economy. And it's important, the aim to have more stable, efficient, competitive, and climate-resilient socioeconomic contexts in the Mediterranean. The MED beneficiary countries are on the map. You can see them in the left part of the slide. There are 8 SEMCs, and mainly all the part of North Africa and Middle East. In the first phase of our project from 2018 to 2020, it was a phase where we were doing a kind of setting the scene, strategies and policies analysis, support to NEAPs, the National Energy Efficiency Plans and Renewable Energy Plans, monitoring the strategies and policies. That's, of course, very relevant in order to establish different solutions also for the policymakers. And we started concentrating our actions on the most consuming energy sectors in the region, that are buildings and appliances. And we still continue in the second phase, more focused on buildings and appliances in the sectors, with the massive development of renewables and energy efficiency, and therefore we are very much linked to the other energy platform, the regulators, the transmission system operators, and in particular the importance of strengthening interconnections for the massive deployment of renewable energy. We established a network, the MED Regional Expert Networks, composed of experts coming from our agencies. In total, we have more than some thousands of experts working also in other different fields, for example, energy technologies. Some of the members are also research centers, but in particular for the MED project, there are already 120 experts involved in the fields of buildings and appliances. Today, I would like to consider another, let's say, another point of view, another angle. That's the energy efficiency, because today we didn't talk until now about energy efficiency. and in particular the energy efficiency first principle. In the last MEDENER week of our project in 2022 in Cairo, the experts from the 13 Mediterranean countries called for the EU energy efficiency first to become a global principle. And this is a relatively new concept. And by the way, last week on the 10th of March, the new Energy Efficiency Directive was agreed in the trilogue between the European Commission, the European Parliament and the Council for the new Energy Efficiency Directive to reform and strengthen this directive. And for the very first time, the energy efficiency first principle is given legal strength. And there is a clear requirement for the EU countries to take energy efficiency into consideration in policy, planning, and major investment decisions in the energy sector and beyond. When we talk with the countries, especially the southern countries, energy efficiency is seen as just saving energies, having some kind of behavior to save energy. But energy efficiency first is not that. Energy efficiency first means taking account in the energy planning and in policy and investment decisions of alternative cost-efficient energy efficiency measures. This is the definition in the article of the Regulation of the Governance of the Energy Union and Climate Action that was published in 2018, at the end of 2018. And of course, energy efficiency is not just looking at the energy demand side, as we are currently doing and working at. This is very relevant, but it must be related to the energy supplies. So energy supply and energy demand together. And it is very relevant to consider the Commission recommendation from September 2021 on the energy efficiency first from principle to practice, because this is linked to the energy planning of the countries. This is a kind of conceptualization of the energy efficiency first principle. So this is taken, by the way, from the ENER First project that's giving also the guidelines to the Commission for the application of this principle. So the supply side energy efficiency will influence also the demand side and together and the choices that will be taken. Of course, this is to be considered for renewable energy integration as we are going to see. The energy efficiency first to become a reality requires a systemic approach to policymaking. And it goes beyond the classic portfolio of energy efficiency policy, as we are all used to consider, because supply side and demand side resources must be considered jointly. So the policies that are usually related to the supply side should be considered at the end of the classic end-use efficiency policies. Should be the end-use efficiency policies should be designed with their potential impact also on the supply of energy in mind. And this is, in my opinion, also tackling all the discussions of today that we are considering regarding interconnections and increase of green energy exchange in the Mediterranean. Of course, this principle is a big challenge. All the European countries will be obliged to establish also agencies or institutions that will be in charge of this according to the new directive. But I would like to close with just some food for thoughts. Among the key messages of the third UFM Ministerial Declaration on Energy, it's the point number 7, that where the ministries of energy expressed the political intention to further support regulatory policy measures necessary to achieve regional integration of energy systems and markets. Of course, promoting the reinforcement of electricity interconnections among the other actions that we need to have. So also at regional level, it's important to consider the energy efficiency first principle at the core of energy system integration. This is, of course, relevant for all the different levels of decision-making process. So having an impact on energy consumption and energy supply. And of course, it should be based on evidence that requires proper verification, monitoring, and evaluation of impacts. What we are already doing as MEDENER and RECRE, and also in our project, regarding the impact of the decisions that are taken. Thank you very much. With this message, I close my intervention.
Thank you, Roberta. And now I welcome Khaled Nouasri, who's the COMELEC Secretary General. Thank you.
Donc, avant de commencer, je m'excuse, je vais faire mon intervention en français. Donc, tout d'abord, je tiens à remercier le secrétaire général du MEDENER de nous avoir invités à faire cette contribution. Et comme vous pouvez le constater, dans ce panel, mon intervention, c'est la seule intervention qui donne un point de vue de la rive sud du Méditerranée, vu la spécificité qu'elle a. Pour planter le décor, c'est juste pour vous dire que le COMELEC, en tant qu'association, a été créé par les sociétés des pays maghrébins depuis les années 70. Donc, elle a pratiquement un demi-siècle d'existence. Et elle avait comme objectif principal de sa création, c'est comment faire pour permettre l'émergence d'un marché de l'électricité dans la région du Maghreb. Depuis, il y a eu beaucoup d'efforts qui ont été consentis par les différents membres et qui ont permis quand même de faire passer les interconnexions d'une capacité d'échange d'environ 100 MW à la fin des années 80 à une capacité d'échange aujourd'hui qui avoisine les 4000 MW, pratiquement 10% de la capacité installée de la région. Bien sûr, il y avait de la volonté politique, il y avait les sociétés qui ont travaillé ensemble pour développer. Et à partir des années 2000, il y a eu l'interconnexion entre la partie du Maghreb et l'Europe. Sur le plan des échanges transfrontaliers par les pays, à partir de 2007, on a commencé par les contrats bilatéraux. Certes, les contrats ont été mis en place, mais les échanges n'ont pas atteint les volumes escomptés, exception faite pour les 2 dernières années, donc 2021 et 2022, entre spécifiquement l'Algérie et la Tunisie. Je vais sur les présentations qui ont été faites de l'étude de TEASIMED, qui a 5 projets qui ont fait l'objet d'études pour développer les interconnexions, parmi les 19 qui sont inscrits. Comme vous pouvez le constater, en termes de financement, les montants qui sont avancés sont des montants quand même assez importants. Et ça reste régler le problème des financements, la problématique des financements, avec la contribution des différents acteurs, permettrait de lancer concrètement les projets. Le premier qui a été concrétisé, je pense qu'il est très bien avancé pour le concrétiser, c'est celui de la Tunisie, el MED. Bien sûr, en plus des interconnexions déjà existantes entre le Maroc, l'ONI et l'Espagne. La problématique auquel on est confronté au jour d'aujourd'hui pour permettre l'émergence du marché, c'est comment harmoniser le cadre réglementaire et législatif qui permettra de faciliter les échanges entre les différents pays. Ça, c'est un premier point sur lequel on va commencer à travailler ensemble. parce qu'on a commencé quand même durant le mois de novembre à mettre les premiers jalons d'une coopération importante avec la rive nord de la Méditerranée pour concrétiser les attendus. Le deuxième point sur lequel on devrait travailler, c'est de dire, OK, on avait parlé, les collègues ont avancé qu'il faut essayer de régler une équation, donc d'assurer la durabilité, la sécurité, mais aussi garantir un accès à une énergie abordable. Je pense que si pour l'Europe, donc la rive nord de la Méditerranée, tous les dispositifs réglementaires en termes de régulation a été mis en place permettant de cadrer les échanges entre les différents pays. Entre le nord et le sud, tout reste à faire et à prendre en charge dans les différentes études qui seront lancées. Le dernier point sur lequel je veux aborder, on avait parlé des ENR, de l'hydrogène vert, on avait parlé des capacités d'échange. On sait qu'au jour d'aujourd'hui, le potentiel, notamment solaire, est au niveau de la rive sud de la Méditerranée. Il faut que les deux parties intègrent dans les études que les aspects de financement doivent intégrer donc les gisements de potentiel et les contraintes pour les faire acheminer aux demandeurs de l'énergie électrique et à la demande. Donc, je pense que le premier projet sur lequel on devrait travailler, M. Angelo, sur lequel on avait eu déjà une discussion sur la plateforme d'échange, qu'il y a lieu de la concrétiser pour l'échange transfrontalier d'énergie. Donc, après la signature du protocole d'Alger en novembre 2022, donc, il y a eu la réunion du comité directeur du COMELEC qui a approuvé l'approche pour travailler, pour mettre en œuvre cette plateforme d'échange. Donc, des task forces qui seront créées donc, durant le deuxième trimestre de l'année 2023 pour essayer de mettre en œuvre ce premier jalon qui permettra premièrement donc, à la région du Maghreb de disposer de cet outil et travailler par la suite pour arriver à une intégration régionale. Donc, je m'excuse, je n'ai pas eu le temps de préparer une présentation à vous soumettre, mais j'ai tenu quand même à participer à cet événement pour lancer les travaux qui ont connu quand même un ralentissement d'échanges durant les 2 dernières années. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Khaled. We have very tight time constraints at the moment, so I'm going to offer to the audience at least one question, and then we will move to the next panel. So would anybody like to ask our fine panel here today a very pertinent question? Don't be shy. Oh, yes, please. Thank you. Would you like to say your name and, yeah, your affiliation? Yeah, thank you.
My name is Juan Manuel Rodriguez from Red Eléctrica de España, and here Technical Committee Regulation Chairperson of MEDENER. Luca mentioned the contrast, and I have to add another thing, the contradictions. Here we see that interconnections, we need lines, we need infrastructure, but nobody wants to have a line near or his garden, no. Then also, and I think that Guido mentioned the operation. For instance, and I think that is a missing stone in many of the presentations, that is dealing with the system operation. I'm from a TSO, a transmission system operator, and then, for instance, last Sunday, we have a better weather in Spain than here in Belgium. Then,
you're showing off there.
At noon, the 63.7% of the consumption was covered only for solar power. 4 years ago, 6 years ago, the wind covered the 49% of the daily consumption. And that is real because we have a brain. And this brain is the system operator. Thanks to the tools that we have put in place, we are able to say and to offer these figures. If not, we will send curtailments every day, every hour. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe any reactions from our panel towards the comments? Maybe Guido and yeah, thank you.
So thank you, one for this intervention. You are right. So the operational side is really important, and I think this is also important that the exchange of knowledge and information in order to be able to manage in a private way the system. I think that all this information, all the knowledge we have has to be shared also within the association, because I think that those are the most important aspects that we also have to take into account.
Thank you, Guido. Maybe if I just have a final question to each of the panel, maybe just in a very short sentence, what would be the game changer in your view that would make the difference here for energy transition and for the Mediterranean? So first I ask Roland, what's in your view the game changer?
No, I think it's very much the 3 levels. No, so we need to have common grid codes to connect the grids. Let's say also what this gentleman said, then a kind of coordinated operation of the grid, and seeing that, let's say, there is a physical connection, but there is also a connection in joint operation, and then on the side of grid codes and standardization, so that the electrons can flow around the Mediterranean, and that there is a connection with ENTSO-E and the Mediterranean system.
Okay, thank you, Roland. Thank you. Rena, what would you say is the game changer for you?
Always have a problem with the microphone. Good.
It is working.
Thank you for the question. I would say an often overlooked sort of point when we're talking about regional interconnection is the intra-regional aspects. So in this case, you could also call it the South-South cooperation also. I am recognizing that this conference itself, it brings together the European and the Northern African counterparts of the Mediterranean. So it is, in essence, an inter-regional conference. But nevertheless, even if you have the inter-regional connections, unless you have a fairly mature, I suppose, a fairly well-developed intra-regional system where you have the interconnectors themselves, and also, as you mentioned, the coordination of the system operation, harmonization of market rules and so on, then we cannot tap into the leverage, essentially the benefits that could be delivered from inter-regional interconnection.
Very good, thank you, Rena. And same for you, Guido. It's especially in cooperation between ENTSO-E and of course MEDCSO.
Yeah, thank you, Sonya, for underlining this point. I think that this point is very important. MEDSO has worked very close to ENTSO-E for the T1DP, for setting the scenarios, sharing the information, all the information. MEDSO received information from ENTSO-E and the same on the other side. I think that for the future, for the next years, it's really important to share the knowledge, share the rules for the operation, and the market rules. I think that this is really important because this will help in developing and managing in a appropriate way the new infrastructure that will be set up.
Thank you very much, Guido. And Roberto, yeah, the guys.
Okay, no.
It is working. Thanks.
It's working, yeah. In my opinion, energy system integration at the regional level, but it depends on the decision-making process. So we do welcome the energy efficiency first principle in Europe. Now we need to work for the region, and we need to fill the gap between the policies and concrete actions, because there are, of course, targets announced by the countries. And I think that our organization, all the organizations at the regional level can help in this.
Thank you. And Khaled, la même question pour vous. Merci.
Merci. Donc, moi, je dirais il faut aller directement au concret. Ce qui manque, c'est la réalisation des infrastructures d'échange. Il n'y aura pas d'intégration s'il n'y a pas d'infrastructure, il n'y a pas de ligne d'interconnexion entre la rive sud et la rive nord. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you to all the panel. I wish you, if you can give your applause to them, so thank you for their contributions, and thank you. We move to the next panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonya, for your contribution. Thanks also to all the panelists for their precious experience and a contribution to the discussion. Now I have the pleasure to invite on the lecture here Ms. Cristina Lobillo Borrero. Ms. Lobillo is from the European Commission DG ENER. She's Director, Head of Energy Platform Task Force in DG ENER. We had the pleasure to have Ms. Lobillo also at the previous closing event of the Mediterranean Project 2. So she is Spanish. Previously she worked in the Spanish government for the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food, and then joining the Commission, she was head of cabinet to the EU Commissioner for Climate Action and Energy, Miguel Arias Cañete. So, Cristina, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for your participation.
Dear Secretary General, distinguished speakers and participants, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very glad for the opportunity to be here today at the closing conference of the EU co-funded TEASIMED project. Over the last year, we have experienced major developments in the global energy system. The unprovoked Russian aggression against Ukraine and weaponization of energy dependencies have deeply disrupted our energy market. We have built the European Union project through a cycle of crisis, and this crisis has also been opportunities, and will continue to do so also this time. In the near term, the European Union has been absorbed by the urgency to replace Russian gas in our energy system, and also to ensure that our economies will be able to continue functioning and hasten geopolitical and energy challenges. But we have not lost sight of the goal to decarbonize our economies. On the contrary, we have proposed measures to accelerate our energy transition, not only in the European Union, but also with our international countries. The present energy and geopolitical context provides very powerful incentives for accelerating the large-scale deployment of renewables, and also the need to have more energy efficiency and greater energy resilience. Speeding up the deployment of renewables is an essential step towards achieving the goal of clean, secure, affordable, abundant, and interconnected renewable energy supply. Within the European Union, as part of the Repower EU, the European Commission proposed an increase of the European Union 2030 target for renewables to 45% from the current 32%. The the European Union has also adopted emergency measures to accelerate the permitting of renewables within the European Union member states. We also adopted our solar strategy, aims to bring online over 320 gigawatts of solar photovoltaic by 2025, and also almost 600 gigawatts by 2030. Around 41 gigawatts of solar photovoltaic capacity were installed in the 2022, which is represent for 47% more than in 2021. And this marked a record of installations in the European Union. Market estimations of the solar industry forecast is a significant growth in installations in the coming years, around 50 gigawatts in 2023 and 85 gigawatts in 2026. Around 15 gigawatts of offshore and onshore capacity wind were installed in 2022, which is 34% more than in the previous year in 2021. As we scale up our renewable energy generation, it's also key to upgrade our electricity grid, as it was mentioned by previous speakers, and enhance also our electricity interconnections, which have view to enable the integration of a rapidly growing share of renewable energy sources. We fully recognize the potential contribution of closer interconnection between the European Union and our neighbor for the energy transition and the decarbonization of our energy systems. To achieve a clean energy acceleration, we need a stronger regional integration of efficient and stable Mediterranean power system, and this will be crucial to achieve this objective. This obviously will require better interconnecting both shores of the Mediterranean, while at the same time we need to enhance the energy security of partners countries and support their clean, just, and inclusive energy transition. Our Euro-Mediterranean interconnection effort rests on the conviction that the European Union level energy dialogue and cooperation with the broader southern neighborhood region will be essential to future energy price stability, security of supply, and shared prosperity. The European Union and southern neighborhood partners both face energy transition and climate challenges, while also featuring bilateral energy synergies and complementarities. Building shared energy infrastructure can emerge as a cost-effective tool to alleviate these issues and contribute to our sustainable development. One paramount point is to expand our cross-border interconnection capacities of energy infrastructure, such as electricity interconnections, that is considered to be a key enabler for the European Green Deal and is one of the priorities of our Repower EU plan. In our external energy engagement strategy, that is part of our last year Repower EU plan, we confirm the need to support network development through our review Trans-European Network for Energy Regulation, the so-called TEN-E. Upgrading the EU's internal power system infrastructure has to work in synchronization with removal of cross-border energy infrastructure bottlenecks, and this is essential for the European Union. The TEN-E regulation focuses on projects linking the energy infrastructure of the EU member state to support the integration of the internal market in energy and also contribute to improve sustainability and to improve the security of supply. Under the TEN-E framework, which entered into force in May the last year, projects connecting the EU member state with partners countries are also eligible to apply for projects of mutual interest. PMIs, as we name them, prove significant benefits for more than one EU member state and prove the contribution to the European Union's security of supply and decarbonization objectives. PMIs may include also joint infrastructure interconnection projects in electricity transmission, hydrogen transport, and CO2 network and storage facility that meet exactly the EU safety standards. Once selected as a PMI, a project may also become eligible for financial assistance from the Connecting Europe facility, exactly the same way that we have for the project of common interest. An important PMI and Euro-Mediterranean power system interconnection milestone was reached with the recent decision to grant CEF funding to around 300 million to the ELMED PMI, the first undersea high-voltage electricity cable interconnecting Italy and Tunisia. The size of the EU financial support to this infrastructure project is unprecedented and proves the importance that the European Union attached to the energy partnership to the Mediterranean. The project will represent a pivotal moment for Euro-Mediterranean electricity infrastructure integration, and it will improve the security and the sustainability of electricity systems between the two shores of the Mediterranean. We also expect the construction of ELMED will facilitate the deployment of renewable power generation, and we are looking forward to discuss with the Tunisian authorities how the solar and wind energy industry can be boosted. Allow me to give you now some information about the next steps, administrative steps in the selection of PCI and PMI proposals. We are currently in the process to assess all the PCIs and PMI proposals received for the 2022 call, and we expect to complete the process for the selection of projects to be included in the 6th list by the end of 2023. The next call for PCIs and PMIs will be launched in 2024, and we look forward to receiving solid project proposals in line with the 10E goals. And we address also interregional power system connectivity gaps via our TEMI framework, but also deploy our external cooperation instrument to support the neighborhood partnered countries in the Mediterranean region to update the domestic power system infrastructure and also tackle the intra-regional power system connectivity gaps. Our joint communication on our renewed partnership with the Southern Neighborhood spells out important priorities for our energy cooperation with the Southern Neighborhood, including the massive deployment of renewable energy and clean hydrogen production in the future. We also include the need to have a stronger interconnection of the electricity system, energy efficiency efforts with a focus on the buildings, and also policies to address methane emissions. The interconnection of power systems should advance in line with the ambitious renewable energy and decarbonization goals. We look forward to building on the result achieved at the COP28 in Sharm el-Sheikh last year and continue working with Mediterranean partner countries to untap the large renewable potential. And we hope that they will be able to produce affordable and abundant renewable energy generation. Over the period 2014 and 2021, the EU mobilized more than 1 billion euros in grants for energy cooperation, out of which 600 million leverage 6.4 billion loans for international financial institutions. For the period 22-27, the Commission also aimed at leverage more than 7 billion euros from private investors via guarantees schemes. Let me also highlight the paramount role that the European Bank of Investment play to this regard. The EIB aim at supporting investment for around 8.5 billion, which is also significantly important for all the projects that should be carried out in the region. But also actions developed by our European Union member states further complement and consolidate the action of the European Union on the ground, also in full coordination with the European Commission through the Team Europe initiative and approaches. On a regional level, we welcome the milestone achieved in Lisbon on 14 June 2021, and the third Ministerial Conference of Energy of the Union for the Mediterranean. The Ministerial Declaration on Energy, adopted in Lisbon, cemented the shared ambition of the 43 Union for Mediterranean member countries to advance the energy transition agenda and strengthen energy cooperation to accelerate the deployment of renewable capacity and the integration of power system. For us, we consider TEASIMED as the culmination of a long-standing work stream supported by the European Commission since 2010 through a consecutive project. And this is the reason why today is a very important day for us, the European Commission as well. TEASIMED addresses in an integrated and holistic manner all the hard and soft infrastructure components necessary to advance the integration of Mediterranean power systems. At large-scale infrastructure investment require also geopolitical and regulatory certainty, as well as strong domestic ownership and political support. And we also see the need to build on the valuable technical work already undertaken and being developed and provide additional political momentum. We need to ensure this strong political backing for viable and sustainable electricity interconnections between our Mediterranean partner countries and the European Union to strengthen the intra-regional and inter-regional electricity interconnector. This is key for the European Union. To this aim, we should build on the consensus gathered around the Union for Mediterranean Ministerial Declaration of Energy, and we look forward to the forthcoming annual meeting that will take place in Barcelona next May to further discuss with the members and regional stakeholders the next steps toward accelerating our shared ambition and deeper integration. To conclude, we see a need to turn the current energy crisis into an opportunity also for deepening our Euro-Mediterranean energy cooperation and strengthen our collective energy resilience. The integration of our power system should go hand in hand with our renewable energy and climate ambition and support accelerated deployment of renewable capacity on the ground to untap the great renewable potential of the Mediterranean region. The work done by MED-TSO is key to advance towards an increasingly interconnected Euro-Mediterranean power, and I wish to warmly thank and congratulate MED-TSO for your important contribution to energy dialogue and cooperation in the Mediterranean region. We stand ready to continue working together towards these goals with MED-TSO and the Mediterranean partner countries and regional stakeholders through our interconnection and cooperation tools. And look forward to continue energy dialogue and engagement with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Borrero, for your words. And now we have a tremendous delay, but a pleasure to invite here for her speech and also to moderate the following panel, Ms. Antonella Battaglini. Antonella is the CEO of the RGI, that's the Renewable Grid Initiative, founded in 2009 and established in Berlin. RGI represents a kind of unique operation among NGOs and TSOs, trying to let two words that in principle should fight, instead cooperate and discuss each other in a very constructive way. So Antonella, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thanks also for inviting me for this conference. So because we are late, I'm going to be fast. I want to mention that, first of all, RGI, Renewables Grid Initiative, is a unique association Angelo mentioned transmission system operators and environmental and climate NGOs from across Europe. We came together because we realized that we have common interest, and very few believed that we could survive the first 6 months. The reality is that we are going to celebrate our 15th birthday next year, together possibly with ENTSO-E. What do we know today? Today we know that renewable energies are the cheapest today for generation. This is already being confirmed in many recent statements from Fatih Birol, from the International Energy Agency. And I say this because it was mentioned in the previous panel that nuclear is very cheap. Today, no. New investments in new generation capacity, renewables are always the cheapest options, including when combined with grids. Grids are essential. We cannot live without electricity grids. Whatever your energy scenarios are, whatever your energy preferences are, you need grids. And of course, the architecture of the grid infrastructure changes completely when you build it on variable renewables, wind and solar. The Med area is an incredible hub of resources, not only renewable resources, but also nature resources and people resources. And we should not underestimate this. If we look at the Mediterranean area as a basin, with a basin approach, then we discover that we can tackle not only the needs of Europe from a European perspective, but we can also better understand and develop win-win situation where the needs of the South European Mediterranean countries are also fully embedded in energy strategies. There cannot be a Mediterranean energy collaboration and an energy strategy if this is not based on a win-win situation, that if this is not based on very strong social and environmental values. I'm invited to speak here because I'm the one who's always trying to combine things that people believe they don't belong together. Energy and nature and people, they belong together, because the energy transition is not simply an economic and a technological transformation. It is first and most of all a societal transformation, and it is a nature transformation. If we understand this, then we have a pool of opportunities to define policies that are much more sustainable, engaging, and probably even cheaper. So when I look at the Med, I see that the Mediterranean basin has a huge offshore potential, and looking at the Med with a basin approach and with an environmental approach, we will find the solutions that will also help development on land. What does it mean, a basin approach? It means an holistic view on how you maximize all the resources that you have to reach your targets. Today, in Europe, but also I would say generally in the world, we have competing and often conflicting targets. We want energy security, we want the cheapest cost, we want climate protection, we want biodiversity protection. And so all of these, they fight against each other. And we are in a moment in Europe where we think that we can only face this energy crisis that we are going through only if we deregulate environmental legislation, only if we forget about stakeholder engagement. But this is not true, because these solutions actually, if they are done horizontally, they will be much more stable. So with RGI, we have a lot of experience in bringing different communities together. And for the offshore, we set up what we call OCEAN, the Offshore Coalition for Energy and Nature. And we are going to launch MEDOcean very soon, where we really put forward solutions to actually do both. You have to imagine that whenever you build something, you can use this infrastructure also to deliver additional benefits. And if you believe that additional benefits at very marginal cost can be added to your energy investments, then you will see that in complexity, you will find the most sustainable solution. I want to finish this by saying that an energy collaboration between Europe and Northern Africa can only be based on a fair deal, which has very strong societal component. It has to be based on education, capacity building, to develop the skills, a workforce that is skilled to deliver on a sustainable, fully decarbonized energy system. We need people to be able to plan and deploy the energy system of the future. And this is in the benefit of both sides of the mat, because Europe needs skilled force and Africa needs skilled force. And if the European Commission wants to do something, is really to put money in developing skilled force. And this could become also a template that could benefit immigration policies. And with this, I would like to call my panelists to join on stage. I know we are late, and I'm going to name all of them. Some of them have difficult names, so I hope I don't misspell them. Abdellatif Bardash, the president of MEDENER, please come on stage. Mohamed El Ousseini from the Union of the Mediterranean, energy and climate expert. Kristina Kanapinskaya, welcome, from the European Investment Bank, and Nina Graal from Energy Communities. Thank you very much for joining. As in the previous panel, each speaker will give an input. I would really recommend that you make your input as short as possible so that then we have some time to get some questions. And you are welcome to come here or to sit as you wish. And we start with Abdellatif. Abdellatif. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Distinguished guests, estimated colleagues, the representative of European Commission and partners, I am very pleased to be amongst you all today as the president of the Association of Mediterranean Energy Regulators, MEDREG. I wish to thank MEDENER for organizing this fruitful conference and for giving us the opportunity to address the importance of policy, financial, and institutional initiatives set up to achieve an effective integration of the Mediterranean power systems. I'm very glad also to be here because I was one among the signatories of the bird certificates of MEDENER in April 2012 on behalf of my former employer, which is Moroccan State Power ONE. And I'm very, very glad, very proud about all the task has been done within this wonderful association, MEDENER. And I will be among the first board of MEDENER as vice president with the first president, Mr. Botarfa. As we gathered here today, we find ourselves a pivotal moment. The world is currently suffering from a multidimensional economic crisis along with energy crisis. aggravated by current geopolitical tensions, the significant rise in oil price, the unpredictable and massive increase in natural gas prices, as well as the increase in coal prices that lead to the result increase of electricity prices, have lasting implications for householders, businesses, external finances, and public finance in developing countries, and moreover, in emerging and developing countries. This crisis is making the energy transition more urgent than ever toward a more sustainable future. Our Euro-Mediterranean region is not exempt from these implications. This is why all actors of the energy sector are called to work toward a coordinated and complementary framework. Our region has all necessary resources to participate in the emergency of a new energy system thanks to the enormous resources it abundance in renewable energy sources, including solar and wind, and traditional sources such as natural gas, which will play an important role in the coming years to accelerate the energy transition. Our association, MEDREG, has a key role to play in this regard, bringing together 27 energy regulators from 22 countries around the Mediterranean. We have developed a strategy refined over the years that has enabled us to establish a robust regulatory framework, generously supported by the European Union, marked by the effective commitment of all members, and executed and followed through by our Secretariat. Furthermore, our various working groups have played an instrumental role in aligning our action and practices with international standards, including those recommended by the International Energy Agency to achieve a successful energy transition. Our goal is to make significant progress toward establishing an integrated Euro-Mediterranean market that can meet the challenges both posed by the anticipated increase in energy consumption, particularly in the southern and eastern Mediterranean region. This will necessitate a sustainable boost in investment in production facilities and transmission networks, including interconnections, to ensure the flexibility required for the expected acceleration in the adoption of renewable energy sources. Attracting domestic and foreign investment and securing the necessary financing will be critical in achieving this increase in investment, which is only feasible if the energy system investment environment is favorable. Regulators have a vital role to play in this regard, ensuring a transparent, non-discriminatory and harmonious regional markets, creating an integrated regional market that leverage the abundance of natural sources in the area and attracts investment and financing. In addition to investing in transmission, interconnection, and distribution for various energy sources, there is a pressing need to modernize the energy system through digitalization, accelerating electricity mobility, exploring relevant storage solutions, accelerating access and innovation vectors, particularly green hydrogen, and of course, enhancing energy efficiency. Despite the action plan of various countries, which still needed to be done to translate them into reality, ultimately, the goal is to provide clean, safe, reliable, and affordable energy to end users, especially vulnerable consumers. Achieving this objective requires increased coordination among all stakeholders with active participation from our association. In this context, MEDREG achieved and worked on many activities and delivered supporting this cause with its members and numerous partners, namely on designing a common approach to consumer protection principle, cross-border coordination for interconnection capacity development, mapping energy efficiency program and e-mobility in the region, and exploring the potential of hydrogen to meet flexibility and storage needs. I cited only a few, thus I invite you all to visit MEDREG's website for more details and to explore other recent achievements of our wonderful association. The significant progress our region has developed is a statement of the effective partnership built between institutions, stakeholders, and association. This partnership have enabled us to overcome many of the challenges that we face in the energy sector, including financing, technology, transfer, and regulatory barriers. However, there is still much to be done. We need to continue building strong partnerships to ensure that we can effectively address energy challenges facing our Mare Nostrum. I am taking the occasion to express again MEDREG's commitment to work with you all for a better energy for future, empowering Mediterranean regulators for a common energy future. And the cooperation between TEASIMED and MEDREG will continue, mainly for this delivery of this TEASIMED, which MEDREG will be involved. Our secretary will be in touch with Mr. Angelo in order to have a look on this project, in order to have a minimum criteria as regulator to approve this and to support these projects. Of course, each link or each interconnection has to be approved by both multilateral regulator, but it's good as MEDREG association to have a look on this in this study and anticipate it for this. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, especially for being super fast. I invite Mohammed now, and I would really appreciate if in your speech you also mention what are the advantages for this collaboration between North and South in the Med, and maybe also touch on the sustainability element, because here everyone is talking about energy collaboration, but sustainability is more than carbon reduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and I will also try to be fast because I know we don't have much time. And in the beginning, I would like to thank MEDTSO for inviting me to this event. And actually, I consider MEDTSO as a very important stakeholder and a partner. We're talking about interconnection, and I really had a problem yesterday with the connection of my flight, so I lost my luggage. But because you are very important for me, I decided to come with my sports shoes and the jeans, because I couldn't miss this opportunity to be here with you and to meet with the stakeholders, and to meet also with the people and the colleagues from the Commission. Now I will go to the UFM Union for the Mediterranean, where I work. I work as energy expert in the Energy and Climate Action Division. And we have a mandate, of course, by two co-presidents. First co-president is the EU Commission, and then the co-president we have from the south is Jordan. And as I heard yesterday, the importance of the multilateralism and regional cooperation in order to achieve mutual interests of both the South and North Mediterranean. Here comes the importance of an organization like Union for the Mediterranean, because we bring people together, and we, let's say, we look for synergies, how to cooperate. We all know that we have, let's say, the sources, abundance of sources, renewables in the south. We have sun, we have wind, not too much water. We have in the north, we have technology, we have advancement, we have money. So all we know, all we want actually is to bring people together to look for opportunities of cooperation. Each side, let's say, have sometimes different, let's not say, different priorities according to the let's say, the capacities that they have, so that the, let's say, the question of the speed of transition in itself sometimes is different from one country to another. And here comes the role of our organization. Under the umbrella of the co-presidency, we do our best in order to bring people together through meetings, through events, through different, let's say, cooperation opportunities, in order to to see how can we speed up this transition, how can we reach a win-win situation, as was mentioned. In our organization, we have 6 divisions. I will not go to all of them because it's more technical. My division is about energy. And as was mentioned also, we worked in depth with the Commission and with Jordan in order to come up with a ministerial declaration which was issued in 2021. Interconnection was strongly present there. And then we have another meeting coming in May, the annual meeting of UFM energy platforms. It will be in May. We will discuss issues related to interconnection. We will discuss issues related to finance, increasing the participation of public sector, encouraging the private sector. This is all within the roadmap for action of energy, which was adopted by the member states of the Union for the Mediterranean. And coming back to MED-TSO, of course, they work with us under one of our energy platforms, the REM, Regional Electricity Market Platform. And we have another platform, Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. MEDENER, of course, is there, RICRI. We also have the gas platform. OME is our stakeholder. So what I want to say is that we work with the co-presidency, the member states, the stakeholders that I mentioned, some of them, in order to come up with solutions to speed up the transition and reach the sustainability goals which were mentioned. It was also mentioned the successful projects, which I myself would like to stress the importance of engaging into them and encouraging them, let's say, the link between Egypt and Greece. There's also the project linking Morocco and Spain. We were part of it as Union for the Mediterranean. We were there in the signing ceremony of this project. This project, the new one between Tunisia and Italy, is really a big step in this regard. So in a nutshell, this is more or less what we are doing, and I look forward to seeing you all in our next meeting, the platform meeting in May. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. And now I would like to invite the lady with the money, Cristina. Very often we talk on how expensive interconnectors are. I think that's one way to describe it. It's not how expensive, but how expensive is in comparison to other things. And of course, we are in a probably new financing crisis popping up. Money is fundamental to build infrastructure, but can we afford it? And not rather if it's expensive, but can we afford it, and should we afford it? And how the European Investment Bank can support these large investment projects. Cristina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Antonella, for this very kind introductions, and good afternoon to all. Bonjour and salam alaikum. It is my honor and pleasure to be present today in this closing session of MED-TSO and to bring the perspectives of the financiers into the discussion, and namely those of the European Investment Bank, which I represent. So my name is Cristina Kanapinskaite. I'm the head of division at the EIB in charge of infrastructure lending in North Africa and Middle East region. The energy sector, as we all heard today, is the backbone of the economies on both shores of Mediterranean. It fuels private sector activity, creates jobs, as well as further development of the public infrastructure and better services to the population. It is the sector, as we heard, which will contribute, and we know, significantly to climate objectives, global climate objectives, with high CO2 savings via transition to renewable energy generation. South-North and South-South Mediterranean energy grid integration is an important strategic choice, with potentially very high benefits to everyone. North-South interconnections are key EU cooperation priorities which EIB support, as highlighted in the EU's Agenda for Mediterranean and Global Gateway initiatives, with projects such as mentioned today, Italy-Tunisia interconnection, Egypt-Greece connections, and future connections, additional connections between Morocco and Spain. The implementation of investments in energy sector depends on joint cooperation, partnership on equal footing between institutions, energy companies, regulators, associations, financiers, and stakeholders. This is why the European Investment Bank takes a holistic approach when financing energy sector in the region. And this involves, amongst others, ensuring that the projects financed by the EIB respect the highest EU environmental and social norms, that there is a continued engagement with affected communities and vulnerable groups, and that reforms, gradual harmonization of energy policies and regulatory frameworks between Mediterranean countries towards a longer-term goal of creating common energy market are encouraged through the institutional and policy dialogue for the sustainability of investments, as Antonella mentioned earlier. Allow me to share you some figures. The EIB is a major financier of sustainable infrastructure energy projects in Europe and outside of its borders. It is lending on average 12 billion euros a year in the sector, out of which 3.5 billion a year for networks and interconnections. Current investment priorities for the Mediterranean region for the EIB are first interconnections, networks, integration of networks, decarbonization of energy supply, more solar and wind generation. Securing also enabling infrastructure, distribution transmission lines are key for the holistic approach and the success of the sector in its integration on both shores of Mediterranean, as well as unlocking energy efficiency potential, which was mentioned earlier by one of the speakers, not to be forgotten. Main types of the transmission investments financed by EIB focus on integration of bulk of renewable resources, offshore and shore, system reinforcements, both internal and cross-border, to enable efficient exploitation of generation resources and market integration. And finally, also looking at improvement of operational performances, monitoring, control, and forecast. Main economic interest that we see in the transmission projects, in energy projects, is the exploiting price arbitrage potential, the shift in peaks, as mentioned earlier, balancing and sharing renewable energy generation in the long term, and occasionally positive impact on reliability of supply. The key challenges that we note in the energy investments funded by the EIB is the stakeholder engagement, institutional buy-in, regulatory environment harmonization, permitting, and land acquisitions. Whilst investments in renewable energy attract quite significant interest from private sector investors, interconnection, transmission, and distribution lines are traditionally financed by national electricity companies on their balance sheets. Major capital investments to build interconnections necessitate significant upfront grants and concessional financing from the international financing institutions as to improve the challenging financial rates of return. Interconnection, transmission, distribution lines remain economically viable. They are eligible for donor grants and IFI support because their economic rate of returns are usually sufficient when looking at them in a dynamic and longer-term perspective, considering continued effort to interconnect national grids and to generate more energy from wind and solar resources. Finally, I'd like to conclude that creating a more integrated Mediterranean energy market is of primary importance for coping with fast-growing energy demand on both shores of the sea and for energy security, all whilst favoring low carbon and renewable energy sources and unlocking energy efficiency where possible. The EIB, the EU, and other partners stand ready to support such vision and such investments. with concessional and long-term financing put in place. I thank you very much for your attention and for invitation to speak at this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to invite Nina. And I must say I'm extremely pleased to have Nina in this panel because she represents the energy communities. And when we talk about interconnectors, very often we focus only on large-scale projects. The reality is that we have learned that distributed generation, distributed networks are going to play an increasing fundamental role in this decarbonization process. And so, Nina, the floor is yours, and I hope you will also touch on the fact that distributed generation is a way to bring people along.
Thank you so much for this very nice and kind introduction. I should maybe clarify a bit on the energy community, but definitely we are also working on decentralized generation, so it's a bit of a link. But let me first thank, like everybody, of course, in this room for the kind invitation. In particular, thanks go to Angelo. But I'm also very happy to see colleagues from MEDENER, with whom we enjoy already a very long-standing and very good cooperation, which would, if somebody would turn on or switch on the slides, lead already to my first slide, which would then explain, well, I don't know. Somebody took it. This one. Oh. The green button. Okay, so good. Thanks a lot. Now, what I said, this leads already a bit to my first slide, and don't worry, I don't have so many prepared. There are only 3 of them, and one can be very short. You see on these 2 maps essentially why we think and why we have already established a good cooperation on regulatory level, and I think this is also one of my points. We have been in the first panel looking more into the TSO questions. Now we look into the regulatory questions, and I'm indeed coming from the regulatory side, so I would like to add a bit here on that. The map on the left is what we created essentially for a workshop that we had in December last year together with the regulators from European side, energy community side, and then MEDENER colleagues. The right one I stole a bit from the website from MED-TSO. Apologize for that, but I think it shows very well that indeed we are looking into a common regional scope, and this I think is already the best explanation why cooperation is necessary, and there's a benefit that can be gained from that. You see there are a few differences. This brings me to the next slide. Now, without going into details of the energy community, you see the main differences that other than MED-TSO, we are working also with Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, in this case as observer, but all the rest, I think we are all on the same geographic page. And I would somehow like to reflect on one point, or on points that have been mentioned already from other speakers. Why would this, apart from the regional aspect, why would this cooperation be of interest or be beneficial? We have common, partly, I put this in brackets, but because it's not the case for all countries, but partly interconnected systems, which of course to a certain extent leads to common, and also this in brackets, to common interest in terms of common rules. And I think what I heard today from discussions from regulatory perspective makes a lot of sense. to start from the operational side, to look first into what is needed to operate systems in a safe way, in a stable way, and to apply common operational standards as a starting point, because this, I think, is something which goes for all of us in any case. Next steps, and then talking a bit of a roadmap, if you want. Of course, when we talk about market integration, this is another issue. I heard several times today the issue of interconnected systems, but also intra-connected systems, which are both arguments that are very fair. And then starting from this, of course, you can only look into questions of market integration, market coupling, you name it. But I think the first step should really be, and I think it was Roland mentioning it, looking into common rules, common grid rules, and from regulatory side, of course, there needs to be an agreement on this. There needs to be agreement between the TSOs, but then also from regulatory side. I think an important point is also security of supply, of course. This goes not only for electricity, this goes also for gas. And here I would like to pick up one argument that has been mentioned. The interest is not only, under quotation marks, on the side of the Mediterranean countries or contracting parties, so energy community countries. There is also interest, of course, from the European side when we talk about renewables, when we talk about gas supplies. So I think this is a mutual benefit that this cooperation can bring. And this, I think, is also the reason why one should continue working on it. This is the last point from my side, one argument or one example that I wanted to show you, because we all know that when we talk about this big region that I showed you on the first slide, we are not talking about the same legal basis for all the countries. We have on the European side, the European acquis, we have energy community acquis with all different layers of being binding or not. And then, of course, we have in the Mediterranean countries not only a common, not a common legal basis, but also the countries have different development status. This we know, but the example by which I would like to show you that the common projects can be also achieved and common success can be achieved even if you don't have a common legal basis, even if you don't have the same market development status. And this picture shows you the activities of the Southeast European Coordinated Auction Office, which has been established, don't quote me, I think 2016, something like this, without a common legal basis, even without the need for the contracting parties to have a common coordinated auction office, let alone that you see, and this is what you see on this map, hopefully. For example, we are talking here, the coordinated auction office is executing or performing joint capacity allocations, forward capacity allocations, for example, between Montenegro and Italy. We are not talking here about the same legal basis yet, I have to say, but it's going to come, but still. At that time, when the CAO was established, there was no common legal basis at all. Same goes for the border Albania-Greece. We have even a third country, a non-contracting party country, which is Turkey. So this shows that if there is interest, if there is market interest, and there is willingness and political commitment, common projects can be realized, even, as I said, without common legal basis. This is it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and apologies.
Oh, we are fine with energy communities as well.
Yes, so it is the energy community and not energy communities. And of course, it is a very important organization to enable collaboration with European neighbors. I think we have a few minutes for two questions. And I would really welcome questions from the audience to make all of this a bit more interactive. So do we, yes, there is a hand there and here in the middle. It's difficult to see with the light in my eyes.
Thank you. Gianni Restano from Terna. I'm responsible for international regulation. Many panelists mentioned the need to attract investments in the southern Mediterranean region. And we know that for attracting investment, especially private investments, the opening of market is paramount. I would like panelists to elaborate a bit on this, looking at the fact that there's still a prevalence of vertically integrated utilities and a lack of market opening, at least looking at the numbers. Maybe mentioning topics of unbundling and political willingness to open the markets. Thank you.
Shall we take also the second question, please? No? Later? Okay. Please, who wants to answer? Unbundling, opening up markets.
I will try to give a few quick answer about your question. With the hat of President of MEDENER, as regulator, we reinforce, we push all the regulators to give more visibility to investors, foreign and local investors, by the unbundling of the activity on TEASIMED. That is a very important issue. And given transparency in terms of tariff to access to the grid, and it's one more important thing. Let's talk about, because you are talking about South, I am from the South, I am President of Authority of Morocco. I will talk first of Morocco, but we are in the stage of the unbundling of the activity of this vertical integrated with ONE, which is a Moroccan State Power Utility. That is in the pipe, it will be done shortly. And also, more than that, give visibility in terms of grid code. We have published the first grid code ever for Morocco. It's published on our website. And other thing also, the tariff to access to the grid, which we're working on this. You're right, the visibility for the investors and the transparency and the clarity is one and the key for the investors. Thank you for these relevant questions.
Anyone else wants to complement? Nina?
I would, if I may, very quickly, I would maybe reply with a question mark. I personally, and again coming from the regulatory side, would see unbundling mainly as a driver for attracting, for fostering competition in terms of, transparent offers for customers and so on. I have my question mark whether it's really unbundling is the main driver for attracting investments. I worked on exemption cases, and from what we saw from infrastructure, coming from the infrastructure corner. So the main arguments for having a project realized or not being realized was more the question of regulatory stability, predictability, you name it, and then the question of rate of return and issues like that. Question of unbundling was rather the opposite. So unbundling was counter-argument for having projects realized. But this is only the experience I can share.
You need the microphone.
Just a clarification, thank you. Are you talking of infrastructure project or production project as well?
Infrastructure in this case.
Okay, thank you.
So maybe from my side, I want to add that Europe has decided for the unbundling, but there are other world regions, namely the US, in developed countries that have not gone through unbundling, and the system seems to work. And what is really important from a market perspective is that there are no barriers for new investment, and there is an adequate remuneration scheme embedded in this market. Maybe worth also mentioning that yesterday the European Commission has tabled a revision of the current European market design, which is now up for consultation. And in this proposition, we see that there is not enough emphasis on electricity grids. So whenever we talk about markets, we need really to pin down the role of electricity grids such to attract these investments. And of course, any market consideration has to be fit for the future. It has to be based on value creation and not just the cheapest possible cost pattern. There was another question here. Yes.
Yes, hi everyone, and thank you to all panelists for the intervention today. It was very interesting. My name is Tiziana de Harley. I am project manager of the MEDENER network. It was very recently launched. It's supported by ENER and aiming at stimulating dialogue on renewable energy and green hydrogen topics across the 9 beneficiary countries, South Mediterranean. So MEDENER, you might have heard of it already, as we have reached some of you to some exchange information meetings.
Sorry,
yeah.
What is your question?
Yes,
because
I'm going to present as a team leader who will have a question for you.
We are out of time, so please be fast.
Merci Tiziana, je suis Nasser Amami, team leader du projet MEDENER. C'est beau pour vous remercier parce qu'on vient de démarrer et on est là avec vous. Et puis, tout ce que j'ai entendu aujourd'hui sont des défis énormes. Et on voit qu'il y a maintenant une vision claire pour aller vers un marché euro-méditerranéen. Et ce marché-là, comme j'ai dit, il y a plein de défis. Avec une approche beaucoup plus régionale, financement régional, politique régionale, une réglementation régionale, et ceci demande beaucoup de temps. Regardons maintenant au niveau des objectifs. On a dit que c'est 80% renouvelable. Oui, c'est bien beau, c'est un grand marché, mais ça au niveau de la consommation. Mais maintenant au niveau de la production, tout ce que je souhaite, qu'on parle encore un défi, c'est une industrie régionale des photovoltaïques. Je ne veux pas développer ces défis-là. Nous sommes tous avec MEDENER. Je souhaiterais à ce que tous les réseaux travaillent ensemble et mettent un plan de rencontre des experts pour relever ces défis. Merci.
Thank you very much. Indeed, we need a comprehensive, holistic approach to the energy transition, and all resources have to be complementary to each other and optimized. I suggest that the speakers and the participants discuss this during the break. And thanks for the contribution. And now I pass the word to Angelo again. Thank you.
Thanks, Antonella. Thanks also to all these distinguished speakers that made so relevant intervention in this panel. We are in a tremendous delay, but anyhow, for your comfort, they'll say that the conference is going to its end. And I have the pleasure now for the closing remarks to invite here on the lecture Mr. Cyril de Wallen from ENER. ENER is a team leader of EU policies in ENER, but first of all is an excellent friend of MEDENER. So he used to be the program manager of all the 3 projects that we have developed so far. So Cyril, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angelo. It's indeed 1:10, so I think you are rather tired, maybe hungry. So I will be rather brief. First of all, I would like to express the sincere apologies of our acting director, Helge Trautmann, who would have loved to be here today, but she was called to a senior management meeting this morning, so she couldn't attend. I have to say I'm very happy to have this meeting in person. I mean, after so many years of virtual links, so I would like to really thank Angelo Ferrante and the MEDENER team for making this possible. Of course, I would like also to thank all of you for being here today, in particular the one coming from abroad. So today we have witnessed the very good results of the TEASIMED project. I think we all agree on the positive outcomes that have been presented, and I think it's good to appreciate that this hard work has been done in difficult times because of the COVID pandemic constraints. But meanwhile, I think you have managed to still nurture this important network of experts. As said by the director of DG ENER, Cristina Lobillo Borrero, I mean, the interconnections, enhancing better interconnections in the region is one of the key priorities of the joint communication that was published in 2021 by the Commission and the External Action Service. It's public on the internet if you want to have a look. And I would like to mention that in this document, if you read correctly the footnotes, you will see that these strategic documents mention the MEDENER master plan that was presented today, which for us, when we drafted this document, was a very important element to insert because it already designs what could be the future in terms of interconnection. And I think it's important to notice that this part of your work is today in the strategic document of the EU. Of course, the clean energy transition is part of our priorities in, let's say, all sectors we work on with the partner countries in the southern neighborhood. And we also acknowledge that, I mean, today, I mean, it's not, this level of ambition might not be possibly shared by all partner countries at the same pace as we have in the EU, but still, we maintain it in our policy dialogue, really at the core of the discussion. And it's not only on the energy sector, it's globally on all sectors of our cooperation. I heard today some very important keywords: sustainability, resilience, affordability, win-win solution. Indeed, I mean, these are the key elements we keep on putting at the heart of our dialogue. I was last week in Beirut for a mission, and I can tell you that indeed in this country, in this very dire situation, we still, I mean, try to see to what extent our instruments can be implemented in such a complex context to foster, let's say, better livelihood of the populations. Energy features among the small windows of opportunities we still see with the stakeholders here, in particular the private sector. And we have witnessed, I mean, that's what the Lebanese told us, that there hasn't been that many solar panels on rooftop than in the past years in Beirut. The case of Lebanon was also highlighted this morning by Luca, I think as a case of isolated country in terms of energy for more than a decade, of course for very specific reasons. But I think it's, I wanted to just to witness this element of our recent mission to Lebanon. We also heard today about interconnection, but also about storage. I think this is an element that we put more and more in the cooperation framework with other partner countries. So thanks a lot, Roland, for having mentioned this morning. And of course, I mean, the boosting of renewable energy sources in the different partner countries remained one of our priorities. I mean, there are too many untapped resources in the southern neighborhood that we'll need to use. Just very briefly, of course, the tragic events in Ukraine last year also pushed us to accelerate the energy transition. You all know about the Repower EU plan, also the EU external energy engagement in a changing world that have also encouraged us at engineer level to reshape our instrument and try to put them in the energy transition, energy efficiency, renewable energy, green hydrogen at let's say a higher level than it was before in the partnership with the different countries, despite, I mean, again, the difficult situation in some of the southern neighborhood countries. We continue supporting regional programs because we still believe in this importance of the regional approach besides the bilateral approaches. And here I would like also to thank the work done by MEDREG, by MEDENER, by RECRI, by OMA, and I would like to salute Huda Alal, who would have loved to be here, but who could not because of the French strike. But Huda, you are with us today, of course. We all work in the framework of the UFM ministerial declaration, and we'll have the chance in 6 weeks from now to review in Barcelona to what extent the roadmap that has been designed and approved by the member state of the UFM is being implemented. Of course, we will share the outcome of this meeting with the people who cannot attend that meeting. What we try to do as in DGNIR is to better link the regional programs that we have with the financial instruments. I mean, you might have heard that we are currently launching a massive new sort of instrument based on guarantee schemes in order to attract the private sector into reaching sustainable development goals in the partner countries, what we call the EFSD+, European Fund for Sustainable Development Plus. And in these endeavors, we of course count on key stakeholders, which are the IFIs. So of course, EBRD, KfW, AFD, FMO, and many others. But of course, last but not least, the EIB. I mean, we talked today about energy and EIB is present. Yesterday, we talked about blue economy, EIB was present. Tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, there will be a discussion on how to increase access to finance for SMEs. EIB is there. So, I mean, I would like to thank you, Cristina, for being here, because for us, it's very important that we work as an EU towards these numerous challenges. I will just conclude by saying that we have to continue this work. It's a very, let's say, there is a very important momentum around this ELMED project, this ELMED realization, which we see as a game changer. It was mentioned by Guido this morning, the same wording that we use at the Commission, but not only to build an interconnection. We also want to use this opportunity to better accompany the Tunisian authorities to finally develop these massive renewables. And as said also by Rena this morning, I mean, why not seize this opportunity to think more in terms of intra-regional interconnection, south-south interconnection? There might be some other countries close by that could be interested in using the opportunity of this new infrastructure, which from the EU side is considered as a global gateway flagship on energy. I will stop here, just confirming that we are glad to pursue the financing of the TEASIMED 2 project for the coming 3 years. I look forward to acknowledging with you the progress on the matter. And I think it's now time to wish you a very good afternoon in Brussels, hopefully still a sunny Brussels. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cyril, for your words. We are at the end of this conference. I can only thank all the participants, all the speakers, the people who traveled to stay here with us. It was, I hope, an interesting conference for all of you. And I would like to say, as I said during the presentation, this is not the first event that we as MEDENER organized at the conclusion of our project. It is not a threat, but it will not be the last.